specific things in the budget in order to accomplish lowering taxes.
Okay, I'm going to hinge on the education question to answer this. I advocate for giving people the option to remove their children and the related money through vouchers, tuition tax credits, any of the several possibilities to give the parents the option of removing their children and the money and send them off and get them out of the public school system. Right now, the public school system is spending state average over $17,000 per year for kids. If you can give parents 75% of that money in a voucher, they'll go off happily, being able to buy nice, very good private education, and the state will save a bunch of money.
Transitioning over to District 18, Steve Hokie, the same question to you. Any places you'd be willing to specifically trim or look at the budget more closely if you're going to lower taxes?
Well, I mean, first off, you got to look at the budget. I mean, it's not here right in front of us for 2025. I mean, I've seen some of these things, just, briefing right over it. I mean, you almost have to go through line by line and look at every one of the spending things that we have to do. I mean, we have to look at what are the necessary things. What is the things that Kansas can't do by themselves? Things that are going to be for all the Kansans, not just certain people and certain things. I mean, this is why we're having to really look and focus at the budget. And Mike Kerner right there, he really hit it on the nail. I mean, we could save a lot of money on the way we do with vouchers and stuff for schools. I mean, we should start promoting homeschooling, microschooling. Even allowing parents to divvy up and go for a private school if it costs more than what the state of Kansas does. I mean, we could save money, because I hate to say this, but our public education system is nothing but a proverbial hole in the ground, and we just dump money into it.
And finally, wrapping up this question to Cindy Neighbor, thank you for switching the microphone over. District 18 still, are you willing to trim any specific things from the budget in order to accomplish lowering taxes if that's your aim?
I agree with Representative Hoy. Medicaid expansion we have worked on for years. We have more than 150,000 people that are uninsured. Those people need good health care, and we need to make that possible. Second of all, if you ever look at the exemptions that we provide through the budget, there are it's millions of dollars. Some of them are for dog shows, some of them are for cigar fundraising and things like that. Those are not necessities. I think we can find some money there, and we can put that into something that is worthwhile, like education, healthcare, mental health. And so exemptions would be one of the things. And finally, we cannot do away with our safety programs in our cities, our states, and our communities. This is imperative. Thank you.
The next issue we'll ask about is education, and a couple of you have already talked about it at length. I was going to ask about school vouchers. I think we know what a couple people think about vouchers up here, but you can expand on that. But maybe I'll broaden the question just to ask you, what do you think are the biggest challenges, if any, facing public education, and how would you approach that if elected or re-elected? And this goes to Joella Hoy first in District 17. So the biggest challenges facing public education, and how would you approach that if elected, or in your case, re-elected? 60 seconds.
Well, I definitely think that we've seen surveys across Kansas, and teachers and educators don't feel supported by the way that we're talking about education right now. In Johnson County, we have amazing public schools. Kansas has great schools. And do we have issues with our standardized tests? Yeah, kids don't always knock it out of the park, but that cannot be the only thing that we look at to decide whether a student is achieving or doing a good job. I mentioned earlier, I think we need to address Capers 3 for our public employees. I think that we'll be able to attract and retain a great education workforce if we do that. And I want to make it very clear, since I didn't say this earlier, I think public funding should go to public schools, and I do not support vouchers. I am very relieved that we've been able to stop the mega voucher bills each year that they've come before us in the legislature. My first term, I was on K-12 education budget, and I am very concerned nationally about the prospect of losing the Department of Education. So I'm a very firm public ed supporter.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, biggest challenges, if any, that you see facing public education?
Well, my personal experience is I have a grandson who's in middle school, and he ran into an awful lot of trouble with bullies, right? Matter of fact, it ended up having to get transferred to another school to get away from them. So there's inherent danger in throwing, especially at middle school ages, of throwing kids together in a large school. I don't remember it being like that when I was in, that age group, but maybe it's just a fuzzy memory. But yeah, getting back, yes, I do advocate for vouchers or any other options you can think of where parents get the option to remove their children from the school, take 75% of the money we're spending and give it to them and let them go away happy. And if the schools tend to empty out, so be it. The parents chose that.
It's transitioning over to District 18, and we'll start with Steve Hoey. This question about education. What, if any, challenges do you see facing Kansas public schools, and how would you approach that if elected? And you can switch the microphone just so we can hear you.
Got it. Anyway, listen, the education system that we've had, I've had two boys that just recently, one just graduated, the other one went 2 years ago. He went through this COVID thing. I mean, I'm going to tell you something straight up. I know there's some people who are going to really hate me about this, but public school system, they're more into indoctrination than education, okay? I mean, they're just damn out of hand, okay? I went through, and I've seen this magazine from Shawnee Mission School District. They are so top-heavy in their employment. You know that the Shawnee Mission School District has one superintendent, 3 assistant superintendents, and then when you go down to the Northwest High School, they have a combination of 5 principals and vice principals. They are so top-heavy in employment and stuff. And the thing is, we don't really teach kids to go through 2 paths. There should be 2 paths. Some will go to college that are intelligent enough to it, and then there'll be some that goes to blue-collar work, like doing tech schools and stuff. But the thing is, we need to teach these kids to come back to Kansas and work in Kansas and take care of the older people.
And stay in District 18 and switch the microphone over. Thank you, Cindy. The question to you, biggest challenges you see facing public schools in Kansas, if in your case re-elected, how would you approach that?
Well, one thing I'm going to refute here is that administration is top-heavy. It's 1% of the budget. And there are associate superintendents, and each one of them covers a different area. Curriculum, safety, HR, all of those have a position, and they're working 50 and 60 hours a week. They're not top-heavy. I am not for vouchers, and I'm not for tax credits. I am very concerned about safety, whether it be the threat of guns or whether it be people making threats to teachers. That is hate, and we do not need hate in our schools. It doesn't help our students, it doesn't help our communities, and it certainly doesn't help us. We need safety first.
Before we interrupt, I see that Steve wants to respond, and you shuffled your papers, and I'll give you a chance, 30 seconds to respond. I will just say we're not going to get into a back and forth about administration at Shawnee Mission School District.
But the one thing the thing is about empowering parents and bringing the kids into these schools, this is where they're actually seeing the money. They're actually taking their kid and sending them to school. I mean, they ought to be, proper rearing of their children, so when they go into that school, they are going there to be educated, not indoctrinated, and they're there to do work. And the thing about it is putting the kids that are intelligent enough that want to go college bound to teach them and get them ready, and then the people who are wanting to do blue collar, we should get them into tech schools.
Okay, thank you. Robert Whitman, the question to you now. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Kansas public schools if you're elected, and how would you approach it?
One of the things that bothers me is, public schools should be funded by the public, and what we need is to make sure that that we have achievement to show for it from our students. Achievement seems to be slowly eroding in our public schools. Also, what are our students being taught? I don't want to knock on another door and talk to a parent whose middle school student got bullied because of what they've been taught in high school. or in school that day, that perhaps maybe they're the oppressor or maybe even the victim of just because of the way they look. That just breaks my heart. And there's a whole lot more I could say on education. I see the time has expired, though.
Moving on to a different topic, it does come from the audience. It's framed in a little bit of a different way, but we might have to modify the question just based on what I suspect you would answer. This questioner does want to ask about Medicaid expansion, but I would imagine that there's people at the table who don't support it. So if you don't support it, please explain why. But if you do support it, the questioner asks, because this has come up year after year and it doesn't go anywhere, is there anything practical that can be done to, as this person puts it, force legislative leadership to allow a floor vote on Medicaid expansion? So it's kind of a two-pronged question depending on how you feel about Medicaid expansion. If you don't support it, why not? If you do, is there any practical solution to pushing the issue forward based on this reader's question? And we'll start with Michael Kerr in District 17, 60 seconds.
Well, I'm not in favor of expanding Medicaid. It's a burden on taxpayers, because remember, we're both state and federal taxpayers. You can't tell me that, oh, the state's giving back money to the federal government. We're both kind of taxpayers. So that, and as I said, you can, if you want to contribute to other people's medical care, we can set up charities and you can contribute your own money, but you can't force us to do it.
Going to District 18, and Steve Hoey, the same question to you about Medicaid expansion.
Well, let's look at it this way. There's not enough time to talk about it. I mean, there's the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. I mean, if you, this is a very long subject, and this needs more time than just 60 seconds. But first off, I'm not for the idea. I think that Medicaid should be the final answer to somebody's health care needs. I mean, we do have to exhaust every possible thing. I mean, I'm going to hate to say this, Kyle, but I've seen 150,000, 263,000 people without health care. You know, people, I got to understand something. There are people out there who don't really believe in having health care. I mean, it's unfortunate, but there are those people who are really dire need of health care. But I will say one thing. I don't want it to be, I hate to say this, and it's going to get people upset. I just don't want it to be used for elective surgeries or elective things that do not have anything to do to the health of a person. And I'd like to expand on that, too.
Staying in District 18 and switching the microphone over to Cindy Neighbor, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion. I suspect you support it, so the question would be, would there be any practical solution to forcing a vote on it? Because really it comes up every year and it really doesn't go anywhere. So what's the practical, what's the reason for continuing to push for it when we know, or we suspect maybe it won't go anywhere?
It passed in the House already, and it died in the Senate. It's based on leadership and majority rule in both the House and the Senate. If we have more people who will support Medicaid expansion, we can get it passed. But it's all going to come down to elections. And those people that want to do it, do your homework. Find out who wants Medicaid expansion, who's going to support the governor. If they don't, we will fight for it again another year.
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion.
Well, through lowering of waiting lists for Medicaid patients and increased reimbursement of doctors who provide Medicaid services, we can at least serve more people that way. Health insurance is not the same as health care, and we need to figure out how to get health care for everyone, not just health insurance. Doctors provide health care, insurance doesn't. So, but it does help pay the cost if we can get enough doctors who actually see Medicaid patients.
Going over to Joella Hoy in District 17 to round out this question, Medicaid expansion to you.
Yeah, I vote in support of Medicaid expansion. There have been some things done procedurally to try to get a vote to the floor in the House, and that has unfortunately not been successful yet to get it to the governor's desk and get it signed. But I think since 40 states have expanded Medicaid, why is Kansas holding out? It's very hard for me to find an answer to that. Each year in the interim that I've been elected, we've gone with the Kansas Hospital Association. We've heard from hospitals, healthcare professionals, chambers of commerce. Over and over again, we as legislators, in a bipartisan manner, hear how important this is to the state. And I don't know about you all, but yeah, we are paying into the federal government that is going to other states, and I'm not getting refunded for that. So I'd like to bring it back to help our state budget, and not only just because it's good business, good for the workforce, it's good for a healthy Kansas. Individuals that need health care, that fall in that gap, are at risk without Medicaid expansion.
We have a couple of questions from the audience regarding guns. You can tell by the way they're worded that we have people in the audience who feel differently about this issue. We have one person ask, how will you promote and work to pass what this questioner calls gun sense legislation, such as secure firearm storage and red flag laws. We have another questioner asks, do gun-free zones encourage violence because people with guns or killers know the staff cannot defend themselves or their students. So we have people on different sides of this, and so maybe it would be illustrative to hear your thoughts on gun legislation, gun control, if you want to call it that. And it starts with Steve Hoey in District 18, if you want to move the microphone.
Oh, Lord. Okay, listen, let's get the facts, okay? Second Amendment rights, right to bear arms, right? Understand one thing. People, guns don't kill people. People kill people. People will kill one way or another. You take the guns away from them, they're going to come at each other with knives. Or take the knives away from them, they're going to come at each other with sticks and rocks. Let's just see that the way it is. I mean, when you start to create a defenseless society where they cannot protect themselves in their own homes, then yeah, I mean, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a defenseless society. And that's where sometimes you'll have these autocratic, or not autocratic, but authoritarian people coming in who have the power. My father lived through that, and was basically World War II in Germany. I'm going to tell you something, this is not the thing to do, but there is one thing is, you need to have gun safety. We need to promote gun safety. We should have gun safety classes for anybody who has a firearm in Kansas.
Staying in District 18, Cindy Neighbor, the question about guns to you. Again, we've heard contrasting views from the audience. Where do you stand? One questioner mentions specific legislation they'd like to see. What would you do re-elected in your case?
We have guns in our house, but they're also locked up. And they're there to go hunting. They're not there to go out and shoot up schools, businesses, people shopping, and create anxiety on whether you're safe to go to a concert. Guns need to be in the hands of people that are trained. I believe in a training program. That training program is not through our public schools, because a program has to be chosen, and everybody has a different view of what program is satisfactory. Guns do not need to be in our classroom. Teachers do not need to be armed. Our teachers are there to keep our children safe and to teach, not to shoot somebody. So I'm in favor of red flag laws. I'm also in favor of, I'm not against...
Finish the thought.
Okay. I am not against people owning guns. I think there is a reason, and you protect your family.
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, your stance on the gun issue, specific policies that you would or would not support, your chance to explain.
We do have a Second Amendment in this country, and it applies to people in Kansas as well. Responsible gun owners are not a threat to anybody. We need to promote responsible gun ownership. I know people who range from unarmed in their homes to 7-foot gun safes full of ammunition and arms. People need to determine what level of security they require in their home. People just don't, a responsible gun owner just won't do any of the things that we read about in the news that are due to irresponsible use of firearms, both by taking them anywhere and by using them for various reasons, or criminal reasons.
Going to District 17, Joella Hoy, your stance on gun issues, any specific legislation you would or would not support, thoughts also about some audience members also expressing just a desire to protect the Second Amendment as well, so explain balancing that too.
In Kansas, we've really been more on the defense against weakening our gun laws. So I would like to pass some sensible gun legislation, and I would look specifically at secure storage. Because today I was reading the Child Death Review Board annual report, and when you look at the number of homicides, and again, for kids age 1 to 17 in our state, 16% of those homicides were the result of an unintentional shooting, where someone's showing the kid a gun. 60% of firearm-related suicides, the owner was the parent or caregiver. 81% of those firearms were not stored in a locked location, and 50% of those were loaded. In the last 5 years of the report, 2018 to 2022, there were 154 firearm deaths of kids ages 1 to 17. 47% were homicides, 45% suicides. Overall, of all of those deaths, only 7% of firearms were securely locked. And of all firearm deaths, 52% of those firearms were of caregivers. So I think we can change our gun culture, our behavior, by having secure storage so that kids don't have unsupervised access to guns.
And rounding out this question, staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, your thoughts on guns, any specific legislation you would or would not support, your philosophy in general? Approach the question as you may.
All right. As I already said before, I'm vehemently opposed to anything that even looks like gun control, like red flag laws or anything else. Yes, gun-free zones do encourage trouble and do encourage shootings. And nobody's going to go walk to a place where he's very likely to be shot back at and start shooting around. It doesn't work. But you give him a gun-free zone, he says, oh, okay, if everyone's, it's open season, I can do whatever I want for about 10 minutes till the police get there. And I can make a name. We find out a lot of the school shooters that of recent years have been under the influence of SSRIs. They've been, they had mental health problems and they were taking SSRIs. I think we need to start to look into that issue and whether we should be using those at all. Let's see. As far as I think teachers should be allowed to be armed, not forced to be, but allowed to be if they wish to, with appropriate storage in the classroom. We can have locked storage in a classroom too, right?
We have time for 2 more questions before we get to the next form, and so we do have one question from the audience about elections. Before that, I'm going to ask a question that we got a lot about via email when we asked readers to ask us what they wanted to ask State House candidates about, and it is about abortion. Of course, 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected a proposed amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. Abortion measures still have been debated the last 2 years in the Kansas State House. Lawmakers have debated dozens of bills seeking in some way to either limit or impact abortion procedures in Kansas. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year. Do you support any new restrictions on abortion or laws in any way governing the procedure? This one starts with Cindy Neighbor. 60 seconds. Why or why not?
I don't support any new legislation on abortion. It is our right as individuals to meet with our doctor, our husbands, our spouses, our mates, and make those kinds of decisions. They are not easy. They are very hard. And we have people that have died in parking lots today because of the states that have such strict laws. I don't want to lose a friend or a neighbor or a relative to that kind of lack of care. And I think it is strategic that we continue to support the August 22 election that set those rules straight. In fact, we've also, it's also been found that many of the laws that have tried to be passed are in court because they're illegal. They are simply against the law. Why pass things that are against the law?
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, your response to this question: do you support any new restrictions on abortion, any laws in any way governing the procedure? Why or why not?
For right now, the abortion question is fairly settled. It's been settled by value them both, and the courts have ruled that any pro-life initiatives that are passed by the legislature are probably not going to pass their muster. That being said, I am pro-life, and I would support any and all pro-life legislation that comes across that comes to a vote in the legislature that protects, that doesn't allow abortion except for the health, except for the life of the mother, except for saving the life of the mother, that is.
Going down to the end of the table, District 17, Joella Hoy, do you support any new restrictions on abortion, any laws that govern the procedure? Why or why not?
I wish I could agree that our overwhelming vote to protect our constitutional rights in Kansas are settled matter, but without Roe v. Wade to protect us, it's just not the case. It is left to the states, and we still see anti-abortion groups trying to chip away at our rights and try to criminalize women and doctors. So it is important, if reproductive rights are a main issue to you, you've got to prioritize it this election, because states with extreme restrictions on abortion have left women alone in parking lots, hospital bathrooms, in danger. Also, some have died. So this is definitely a life or death matter, and I know Kansans aren't going to let that happen here. We're going to protect that right in our state. So please vote to protect reproductive rights, including contraception and IVF treatment.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, your thoughts on abortion?
I'm personally pro-life, but I understand how the people voted, and we're going to have to live by that for now. There's nothing to be done about it, but we can ensure that the state doesn't pay via Medicaid for abortions unless the life of the mother is at stake. I don't want to have to be paying for hired killers. That's my position on that. All right.
And rounding out this question, back in District 18, Steve Hohe.
Okay, August 8th, 2022, the primary. The people had spoken. The vote was being done by the people. They seen what it was there before them. They chose. The value them both went down. It's done. Okay. Now we're going to go forth and navigate this. Okay. And for all we know, years from now we're going to change our minds and go to something different. But I really think that it was a blessings to allow the people to have to eliminate Roe v. Wade and give it to each state to decide how they want their abortion, if they want abortion or not. Now we just have to go and navigate. From here on out, it's going to be between a doctor and a woman on the idea of these certain procedures. And I'm just going to say one thing, and you're going to hate me about this, but I really think when you say abortion, elective abortion, you call it reproductive health. I call it deproductive. Okay? I mean, this is an elective thing. Now, when the mothers...
Finish the thought.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, we're here standing at a precipice, and we're sitting here making these words and being this word salad, reproductive health and all this stuff. I mean, come on. Let's
get
just
one
look
more
at
question in before 6 o'clock, before we move on to the next forum. But we're going to start with Robert Whitman, I believe, is where the order falls in District 18. And this is the last question. We're going to forego closing statements just because of the time, so this will be the final question. It comes from the audience. Do you think our elections in Kansas are secure, and what steps, if any, would you take in the future to continue to keep them secure? So really wanting to ask about election security. Others call it election integrity, but hear your views on that. Robert Whitman, 60 seconds.
Well, the biggest problem with our elections right now is transparency. I mean, we vote, most people vote by machine, use a machine to mark their ballot and have their ballot tabulated. There are possible problems with that. I personally get a paper ballot and have it hand counted, and I would recommend that for everyone. Although you can think of ways to cheat on any type of election system that you come up with, I just think the paper trail provided by paper ballots is the best. Election security, it's fairly good here in Kansas, and I think we should allow people to question this or that election security measure without the fear of being labeled as some sort of election denier. I don't think people deny elections in this state.
Going to District 17, Joelle LaHoy, down at the other end of the table, do you think our elections in Kansas are secure? What steps would you take in the future to continue to keep them secure?
Our elections in Kansas are secure. Our Secretary of State is doing a good job, and his staff often comes in and testifies in some of our committees about the security of our elections. We have had some bills come up that restrictions on people being able to have their vote counted. And if you vote here in Johnson County and you vote on the machine, it does print out a paper ballot that you can look at with your very own eyes. And I encourage you to look it over and see if that's what the button you pushed showed up there. I am very concerned that there are nationwide leaders who are still casting doubt on the 2020 election. Joe Biden won fair and square, and I hope that all the Kansas leaders will be respectful, as we were last time, to avoid any sort of violence as it relates to our elections, because that's just not something that fits here in Kansas or in our country.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, the question to you about election security. Do you think elections are secure, or do you approach that issue if elected?
Our current system, the way at least this county operates, seems okay, except for the mail-in ballots. I would eliminate no excuse mail-in ballots. It should only be for disabled people. Once you have no excuse mail-in ballots, it's just an opening for fraud. Most of Europe eliminated mail-in ballots just for that reason. It just became too easy to cheat. That's the question you answered. 2020 election, was that good? I think that there was one very major problem with the 2020 election, and that was the way the Hunter Biden laptop was treated, completely buried with censorship. Nobody knew anything about it until after the election. Oh, it was Russian disinformation, forget about that. Well, it wasn't. And it had evidence of fraud from both Hunter and his dad. And that very well might have swung the election. Can't tell that for sure, but that should never have happened, and that's a good example of the danger of censorship.
District 18, Steve Hoagie, the question about election security. Do you think elections in Kansas are secure, or do you think to make them more secure in the future?
Well, first off, I'm with Robert here about the idea of paper ballot. The Dominion machines, I question the thing about the Dominion machines. They're electronic, and when you say, what's his name, Hoya? When she says that you get a paper, well, you get the paper, then you have to put it back into the thing. What's getting printed out and what goes into the machine are maybe two different things. I would say one thing: if I was going to vote that Dominion machine and that thing comes out, I want to keep it. And if there is any kind of thing, there's some distrust to the system, then we can deal with it. Now, as far as mail-in ballots, let me ask you something, folks. Which one would you, if you have $5,000 and $100 bills and you put it in an envelope and you put it into a mailbox, or you have an ATM, which one would you think you would have more security with as far as getting some kind of documentation? That's my thing about it, is that the thing is when you have it valid things, it becomes a sense of fraud. And we also need to start looking at the voter rolls and see if they've been properly audited.
And rounding out this question, actually getting the final response before we end this forum, Cindy Neighbor, the idea of election security. Do you think elections in Kansas are secure? Would you want to do anything else to make them more secure?
I actually sit on the elections committee, and we had several bills this year that addressed issues that have come about through false statements. We have a very, very secure election system in Kansas. I've been to at least 3 large election offices and have seen the process in each one. I would encourage each one of you, if you have a question, take the time to go look, ask questions, and see how secure it is. Paper ballots, let's look at the mail system, folks. We don't get our mail on time. Sometimes we don't get mail at all for days. We have a problem with mail, and those mail-in ballots this last election, they had to get rid of, 1,000 ballots because they were postmarked. That's the law. So there are some things, I think, within the system that need to be corrected, but it's not in the election office itself.
Well, thank you so much for the candidates for your participation in tonight's forum. I'd also like to thank Post staffers once again for their behind-the-scenes support of this forum. For those in the crowd, give them a round of applause for showing up and participating. We're going to to hustle to the next form, so just a couple of reminders for those of you watching online. The deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 15th. Early voting starts Saturday, October 19th, and of course, Election Day itself is November 5th. Thank you so much for watching this form, and you can go to johnsoncountypost.com for more election coverage.
Sorry about being late. No, I wanted to give you a good introduction.
Cindy, you spoke about women's rights. You're a big supporter of women's rights to control their health, their health care. Is that all women? I mean,
What do you mean by all women?
well, do you support the right of women in the womb to be born?
There are times that, I'm going to leave that question. I'm not in favor. I think the life and health.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I think the life and health of the mother.
It's very important. I don't deny that.
And rape. Those are two horrible things.
What about?
And if you haven't gone through it, then you don't understand. And
The life of the fetus, is that important to you?
of course it is.
Okay. I'm good to hear that.
It always is. My daughter's an OBGYN. Oh, good job.
Thank you.
I know you, but I don't remember from where.
I've met you before. Billy Crone, probably.
Oh,
Matthew
yeah,
Clark.
okay, yeah. You helped me do some
Good debate up there. You did good. I hope you get it.
Positive feedback from you, I guess.
Yes. So, I've been coming to these and trying to talk to candidates and.
Questions back?
What do you guys prefer? I mean, I don't want to waste your time walking them back and forth.
Kyle was letting.
I try to not send them in unless it's a topic that they've started to talk about. I can hold it up when one of them comes up, when it becomes relevant. But I try to save them until one of the candidates says something in their intro remarks about something that I had commented on. Yeah. Thank you.
But then when you had the kids say we had a little photo shoot now. Didn't we? Oh, yes.
One thing I wanted to comment about, I like a lot of the stuff that you said up there.
Yeah.
Our rights don't come from the Second Amendment. Our rights to self-defense come from our Creator, from our existence, from our humanity.
Well,
the Second Amendment is, and the Fourth Amendment in Kansas are government restrictions to keep the government from wasting our tax money infringing on those rights.
I mean, you're 100% right.
There's people that will disagree with me in this room, I'm sure, but
no, you're absolutely right. Our rights do come from the Constitution was God inspired for sure, and you just don't have enough time to expound on that.
Yeah. It's the Fourth in Kansas.
The Fourth
Amendment to the state Constitution. If you ever debate it with one of them again, ask them what the Fourth Amendment in Kansas says, and let them reveal they haven't read the Constitution.
Well, I was talking about the Second Amendment in the federal Constitution that also applies in Kansas.
It does, but the Kansas Fourth Amendment is actually more inclusive and more encompassing of that human right.
You know what?
It has better things to say. So
I should examine that.
Yes, you should. Everyone up there should.
Yes, I should.
Have a nice one. I'm going to get ready for the next. Robert, thank you.
Yeah.
When I worked as a flogger at the TV station, it was 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15, and $5.
I'll be floating around, so kind of look for me.
We'll do this. Thank you, man.
All right. Where's Is the camera angle on? Is on?
Are you ready to go live? Okay, we're going now.
All right, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for two Kansas House districts in northwestern Johnson County. This is House District 39 to your left and House District 117 to the right. We'll give the candidates a chance to introduce themselves shortly. This is the second of three scheduled forums we're hosting this evening at Monticello Library in in Shawnee. I apologize. I was at Miriam Tuesday night. All three of the forums we do tonight are being live streamed in the separate videos. Each forum will be put on the Post Facebook page where voters can view them at any point between now and November 5th. We want to thank the Johnson County Library for allowing the use of this space tonight. We want to thank the candidates for their participation, of course. We want to also thank those of you in attendance or watching online. We want to thank the Royals for winning yesterday, so there's no conflict. We can all agree to that. I finally want to thank our subscribers as well. It's your support that allows us to put on events like this and cover local elections every year like no other local news outlet does. With all that being said, again, this is the second of three, so we're going to dive right in. The candidates know the format. If you were here for the first forum, you also know the format, but you'll quickly pick it up. And so we'll start with opening statements, and the luck of the draw fell to Vanessa Vaughn West to begin opening statements. And so we'll start in District 39 with Vanessa. 1 minute each for opening statements, and Vanessa, you can start.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'm Vanessa Vaughn West, and I am running to be the representative from District 39, which essentially covers Shawnee and Lake Quivira. So I want to begin tonight by just sharing a little bit about myself. So I am not a career politician. I'm a mom, and I'm an executive, and I'm really coming from a working class family. I grew up in an apartment, and so I know firsthand what it's like to struggle and the power of hard work to create opportunities. I've spent my career working in a variety of different sectors, also including local government, as well as not-for-profit leadership, working in banking, and now working in the legal field. And the through line of all of those is that I've been a person to build collaborative engagement, to build consensus, and to be able to get problems solved. Those are what I like to call easily transferable skills that will serve me well in the legislature. I'm committed to increasing, expanding Medicaid, to funding our schools, to also being able to protect women's rights, and also supporting affordable housing and many, many other things, including lowering taxes that we'll get to later tonight. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
And we'll circle back around to Angela Steens in a bit, but we'll jump over to House District 117 first, and Bill Hammond, give you a chance to introduce yourself, Bill.
My name is Bill
Maybe
Hammond.
just shoot it just a little bit closer to the microphone.
Closer? Okay, we're going to get this right one way or the other.
That's good.
You know, I actually used to be a stagehand with Local 43 in St. Joe, and getting mics in front of people is a big issue, getting them in the right place. My name's Bill Hammond. I'm running for the 117th House District. Probably three issues that, oh, by the way, thank you for hosting this, thank the library, and thank you all for coming. Thank you for your interest, because without your interest, elections don't happen the way they should. I am very concerned about women's rights. There's been a whole lot of things across the country. I think we need to be very careful about that. And I bluntly think we ought to let women make their own decision, and us men ought to keep ourselves out of it. I believe in affordable health care for all, and I've served on a federally qualified health center, also on Oral Health Kansas. I hope I get a chance to talk about that a little bit more later. And I'm strong on public education. I served on schools for fair funding for a long time, and it took us 10 years to get constitutional funding for our kids. That's up for renewal in the election. Don't want to lose it. That's why I'm running.
Thank you to Bill. Also in this race is Adam Turk. He's the incumbent Republican representative in House District 117. Was not able to make it tonight. He is the father of some young children and had a family conflict, so he could not be here tonight. I will also say District 117, about half of it's in Johnson County, half of it's in Douglas County, but it covers portions of DeSoto, Lenexa, Olathe, and Shawnee. Let's go back to District 39 and give Angela Steens a chance to introduce herself at the end of the table.
Yes, well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you to the Johnson County Post and the Monticello Library for hosting tonight. Well, good evening. My name is Angela Steens. I'm currently the representative for District 39. I was sworn back into the legislature back in March when Owen Donahoe, who previously held this seat, retired. My husband Shannon is here tonight. We have been married for 32 years. We have lived in Shawnee for 26 years in the same house, if you can believe that. We have 5 children who have all attended the area schools here. We also have 3 grandchildren whose future I'm also very invested in and care very much about. I think I bring a unique skill set to this position. I've been in healthcare for 28 and a half years. I also have local government experience and love my community here in Shawnee. I've worked with a variety of people from all walks of life. Shawnee is our home. We love this community. We're invested in this community. When I think back about this district, I think very much about how I've been so pleased to serve it. And I just want to thank you, and I hope to earn your vote on November 5th.
And, House District 39, of course, covers much of the western half of Shawnee, as well as parts of Lake Quivira and a little pocket of Bonner Springs that goes south of the Kansas River. So let's give these candidates a chance to expound more. And we've been giving you an introductory question in these State House forums, give you a chance to talk a little bit more maybe about your district and your priorities. The order will fall to Bill Hammond in the District 117 contest. What do you see as the biggest priority or need from residents in this district? And you'll all get 90 seconds to respond to this.
There are a variety of things that are going to be before the legislature in the next session. School funding is going to be up, budget's going to be up, what are we going to do about property taxes? That's going to be up. DeSoto, we have a little expansion in DeSoto. I want to make sure if I'm elected that everything that has been promised DeSoto and the community from the state happens. I want a checklist. I want to make sure that they get everything from the state that's been promised. I also want to make sure if there are things that come up in that project that weren't expected, that are extra, that we go to the state and make sure we get the funding for those things. So that's one of the priorities in this district. Obviously, we need to focus on property taxes. I understand as I've gone door to door, people are really concerned, retirees are concerned, can they stay in their home with the continuing rise in property taxes, and I hope we have a chance to talk about that just a little bit more in this session.
Going over to District 39, and the order falls to Angela Steens. You get to talk about the biggest priorities you see for the residents in District 39.
Well, I have knocked on, I'm sure like most of my opponents here, one of my opponents and the other gentleman here from District 117, over 5,000 doors. And most of my constituents here are very concerned about the economy. They see inflation. I had a lady the other day who said she paid $3.77 for just a carton of eggs. The inflation has gotten out of control. After 3.5 more years, we can't afford any more of this. Here in Kansas, property taxes are sky high. In Shawnee alone, they went up 21%. People are being taxed out of their homes. I have seniors. I had a lady who told me that she's worried she had to write a property tax bill for $10,000. That is of much concern for me. I am very compassionate. I've worked with seniors for most of my career, and to see them just thinking how they have to flee this state because they can't afford their property taxes is a huge concern. And that's something that I really want to work on when we get back to Topeka. And I want to make sure that we really listen to the people here, because that is one thing that I feel like a lot of people that differentiates me from other people in this race. Thank you.
Staying in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, the biggest priority or need from residents in this district.
Yeah, mine.
Just press the button and should you see a green light, there you go.
Perfect. Yeah, so I have had the pleasure of knocking a lot of doors, making sure that I'm talking to people to understand what is important to them. My mantra has been to canvas, connect, and repeat. And I'm doing that because I know the value of understanding what the folks in our district value, and also being able to be a representative of those values, separating any personal ideologies from what the people actually want and being able to represent.
It holds for your constituents and for Kansans, and so let's start there. The order will fall to Angela Steens in District 39, so that's where we'll begin. All of you will get 60 seconds to respond to this initial question about taxes. You all acknowledge that taxes are an issue, that your constituents are looking for some form of relief. So if elected or re-elected, how would you go about doing that? Are there other tax cuts or tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? You did mention residential property taxes. Is there anything the state can do in regards to that? Of course, all this on the backs of the fact that there was a tax relief package that was passed and signed into law this summer. So there were some things already put on the books there. But any more tax cuts, tax relief policies you would want to pursue, what would be your approach to it? Angela Steens. 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, I'd like to state that we did pass unanimously a bipartisan tax plan. That was passed. We had every vote on the floor, which from my understanding is a very amazing event in itself. We did get Social Security taxes eliminated. We were able to do those things, and I think that's very important, especially for our seniors. But we do need to fix our broken appraisal system. I would be in favor of doing a constitutional amendment to do a 4% cap on property taxes. That is something that we could put to the voters. We did vote on that in the Senate. It did not come to the House, unfortunately. But I do think that is something that we could definitely get done. And I want to just state, here in Shawnee, on the council, I have voted repeatedly to lower the mill levy 3 times. Last time, I'll just say people on the other aisle did not vote to do that, but I have voted to lower the mill levy here in Shawnee at the local level.
Staying in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, any other tax cuts, tax relief policies or priorities that you would pursue if elected next year? In particular, maybe respond to the idea of addressing property taxes through a cap.
Yeah, for sure. So a few things. One is that I want to be clear in that we have a surplus in our Kansas budget, and I want folks to know that I am not a person who wants to raise taxes in any way. I think there's some misnomers out there. I firmly believe that we need to be lowering taxes. That's the discussion we need to be having right now. So with that in mind, as we think about how to do that, there are some things that have been barriers to us making more tax progress than we've made. Well, we have made, and so we really have a few options. One is to really consider how we are going to restore things like the LAVTRF, which was a cache of money that was given to counties and cities in order to reduce that tax burden, which often resulted in a decrease in mill levies.
And we'll stop there.
Okay.
Go back to Bill Hammond in District 117. Any other tax cuts, tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? Anything in particular regarding addressing rising residential property taxes?
I just want to go back to the LAVTR. I was actually a business officer at a community college when we had the LAVTR. It actually worked. It actually reduced taxes. Now, I understand the legislature decided to throw that out this year, and I didn't quite understand why, because that was a pretty simple way of reducing property taxes, but continuing with the services that you need at the local level. I was there as a business officer. It worked. Second thing I think we need to understand, when the Constitution came in, residential property taxes were about 30% of property taxes. That's off a little bit, but it's about 30%. Today, they're over 50%. What's happened? Well, we've given all sorts of tax breaks to businesses, and I like economic development. I don't want to overtax businesses, but we've seen that shift from the businesses to the residential. I think we need to take a hard look at that. I think we've got to find some way to get residential property taxes down.
Continuing along this same line of questioning, we did get a number of questions from readers asking specifically about tax relief for seniors. The state does already offer some property tax rebate programs for low-income and disabled seniors as well as veterans. We do hear frequently from older Johnson Countyans living on fixed or retirement income worried about property taxes. So is there anything more the state can do to address this particular group of taxpayers? That order falls to Vanessa Vaughn West in District 39. 1 minute.
Yes, so I've got a few considerations for us to take a look at. The first is the expansion of our Homestead Act. So this would allow us to have more people, especially those on a fixed income, retirees, who would be qualified to be able to get that tax break. It's something that folks in the legislature on one side of the House tried to do, but failed because of the supermajority. Secondly, we could consider some sales tax exemptions for prescription drugs. We know that many of our seniors, many of our retirees have a higher burden of taxes or medical expenses, and so being able to look at that. Thirdly, tax breaks for caregivers. There are many of us who are in that sandwich side of life, where we're caring for aging adults as well as caring for growing children. Being able to alleviate some of the tax burden, not only for those aging adults, but for their caregivers. And then lastly, we have Medicaid opportunities, right? When we expand Medicaid, that creates some additional leverage in the budget and allows us to be able to do more with that funding. So.
Into District 117, Bill Hammond, any more that the state can do addressing seniors and taxes?
I think your seniors and taxes, I think the big thing was the Social Security.
Okay, yeah, just scoot a little bit forward, closer to the microphone. There you go.
I'm sorry, I
No,
told you
that's-
this mic
yeah.
thing's a big deal. Hey, I'm glad you all can laugh out there. You know, it's good to have a political discussion and people aren't just growling at each other. So let's do that. All right, let's talk about taxes just a little bit and seniors. I think the Social Security thing was a good deal. I'm on Social Security, by the way. I appreciate Social Security. Social Security is a good deal. Anybody who wants to privatize Social Security, I would never vote for that. I just want you to know that. Okay. So I'm glad to see we got the taxes off Social Security. I think we've got to look at more things like the Homestead Act so that we can really look at helping people stay in their homes and not be taxed to death out of their homes. I think we need to look at that.
And finishing this question back in District 39, Angela Steens, anything more the state can do to address seniors and taxes?
Well, as my other people mentioned here, I would say the same thing. We did eliminate the Social Security taxes, which I appreciate. A lot of my seniors were very concerned about that. I did want to address one thing, though. The grocery taxes that my opponent mentioned, they would have been eliminated by July 1st, except for the governor vetoed our last tax bill that we had at the end of session. So unfortunately, because we had to come back for a special session, we were unable to do that by July 1st. So now we have to wait till January for that. The other thing I think that was mentioned was the LAVTR. And unfortunately, the LAVTR was being used inappropriately, and the county was taking that and not using it to lower their property tax value that they were supposed to. So that's why we decided to get rid of the LAVTR, because it was not being used appropriately. So I think, as many have mentioned, I'm not against helping some of our, obviously the homestead tax, my grandmother used that. I'm in healthcare, I know what it is. I have friends that are taking care of their elderly parents at home, and that is a big issue. So I think those are things that we can look at the
And just give
legislative.
Vanessa Vaughn West just 30 seconds to respond to the particular point about the sales tax on food.
Yeah, two things. Let me just address the LAVTRF, and that is the
Local ad valorem tax reduction fund, by the way.
Thank you.
If you're watching.
It was on the budget.
Yeah, and it's something that hasn't been funded for many, many years, and ultimately last session, the legislature decided to do away with it. So I think it is a little bit inaccurate to say that it wasn't being used properly. It wasn't able to be funded, so we didn't have that opportunity. When it comes to the grocery tax, that is something that was in the governor's budget when she was reelected 2 years ago, and it wasn't able to be discussed because of some limitations put forth by the supermajority.
Well, let's go to the next order. Will fall to Bill Hammond in District 117. A couple of you mentioned education, public schools in your first response about priorities. We do have a question from the audience that kind of hits upon that, so I'll just ask that directly, and it also kind of gets the taxes as well. So we'll give you each 60 seconds to respond to this. And this is the questioner. Whether you agree with the premise of the question or not, maybe you can address that. But what steps will you take to ensure that taxes are only used to support public schools in Districts 39 and 117 and across the state to meet the Kansas Constitution's requirement to fully fund public schools? So again, like I said, you can address the premise of that question, but you can also just respond to that in general. So Bill Hammond, the idea of making sure that schools are fully funded and only going to public schools in the awards of this questioner.
Having attended schools for fair funding meetings for well over a decade, and have been through multiple studies of school funding, that's about a 2-hour question. And I'm not being facetious. I'm not being facetious in that school funding is a complicated issue, and being able to measure the effectiveness, and also coming up to a system that will solve a district with 40,000 students or 400 is complicated. The difference between urban and rural, transportation costs, special ed, it's hard. What we've got to make sure of is that we care enough about our kids and our teachers and our people working in public schools that we do fund public education, and we fund it so we can attract the best teachers, the best administrators, and the best people in the country. And we will not do that with Capers 3. We're losing teachers. I was at a meeting of Kansas Association of School Boards. There are people who will not even apply in Kansas today because of Capers 3 in the retirement system.
Going over to District 39, the questioner from the audience, Angela Steens, what would you do to ensure that Kansas schools, both in District 39 as well as beyond in Kansas, are fully funded as the Constitution requires?
Well, first of all, we have great schools here in Johnson County. We're really lucky. We have a DeSoto School District here that's excellent, that my kids have attended. We also have Shawnee Mission Northwest over here, so we have part of the Shawnee Mission district as well. And what I can tell you is that for the past 6 years, and I can even have a quote here from our governor, I am proud to say that in a bipartisan manner for the 6th year in a row, we have fully funded our public schools. We are equipping our students and educators with the resources they need to succeed in the classroom. We have also provided additional 75+ million for special ed. So we have a $5 billion project here. We have funding here in Kansas. So we spend a lot on our students here, and I'm proud to say that we have great schools here. I have had children that have been both in public and private schools, and I pay my taxes, and my kids are individuals. So I think, it depends on the child sometimes and where they go, but I can proudly tell you that we have fully funded schools every time.
And rounding out this question in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, again, the questioner asked what would you do to ensure that public schools in District 39 and across the state meet the Kansas Constitution's requirements to be fully funded.
Yeah, it is the expectation and responsibility of our community to have strong public schools. It's something that can't be compromised. It sets us up as a state for it sets our kids up for great futures, and it sets us up as a state that can compete internationally and globally in the economy. Without fully funding our public schools, without supporting special education, we are setting ourselves at a deficit. And so when we hear about programs such as voucher programs, which take money from the public schools and give it to special interests, private interests, so that kids can go to private school education, it really harms us. We already heard about the challenges that we are having in retaining and attracting teachers, getting them to stay, whether it's due to capers or other reasons. If you add that to the school voucher issue, we're going to find ourselves in a very, very scary and detrimental place as we look at the future of Kansas.
A follow-up question for all three of you, and the order will fall to Angela Steens in District 39. Embedded in that audience question was the notion that public dollars should go only to public schools, and so the question I want to ask you is, if elected, would you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals enrolled in private or religious schools? Certainly some measures have been debated in recent years, whether you call them school vouchers or tax credit scholarships. So would you use taxpayer dollars to go to be able to go to individuals enrolled in private or parochial schools? Let's start with Angela Steens.
Yes, thank you. So what I would say is there are children here in failing schools, and where they live in some districts, they don't have some of the quality education that we do here in Johnson County. As far as tax credits go, I know that there's a $10 million cap on it. It does not come out of the public school fund, so I think that is a misinformation thing that is being floated around. So as far as that goes, it comes out of the general fund. So as far as tax credits for parents, just because you live in a failing school, I don't think that you should have to go to that school if your child is suffering. I know, for instance, I have when things were going around, I had children that were learning online, and my daughter was failing horribly, and then we decided that we needed to pull her and put her in a private school. So I think parents need to make those decisions for their children. I don't think it's fair to say because your child is in a failing school that you don't have the opportunity to go somewhere else where your child will get a quality education. And that's where I stand on that.
Staying in District 39, the question is, would you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals or families enrolled in private or parochial schools? Vanessa Vaughn West.
Yeah, so let me be clear. We are not talking about whether a parent has the right to choose where their child goes to school. What we're talking about is whether we're going to use taxpayer dollars to fund that parent's choice to send their child to private school. Those are two different things. And again, it is our responsibility as community members to ensure that our public schools are strong. If someone chooses to send their child to private school, as I actually chose to do one summer for my child who has special needs, I paid for that. I recognize the responsibility to pay for that. It is not the taxpayer's responsibility to siphon that money off in order to do that. Now let's also pause and think about why some of those rural schools are failing. And I think it has to do because we are losing hospitals, we're losing jobs, and we're losing those things in part because we're not fully and adequately funding our healthcare system through Medicaid. We're not investing in economic development and innovation, and we need to think about those decisions and their impact on these communities and recognize that those impact the schools as well.
To Bill Hammond in District 117, do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals or families enrolled in private or parochial schools?
To me, it's a pretty simple thing. Having worked in the budgets for a lot of years, public money should go to public schools, private money should go to private schools. And I really do believe that. You know, we talk a lot about failing schools. I guess the only thing I want to say is we graduate well over 20,000 kids from high school in Kansas. I'm kind of tired of hearing about how we're failing everybody. I don't think we are. I think we got a pretty good school system across the state. Does that mean every school's perfect? No. Does it mean we're going to continue to improve? Yes. You know what? I'd like to put back in Kansas law that we want a world-class education for our kids that used to be there. It was taken out. I want a world-class education for my Kansas kids.
We have a question from the audience regarding abortion, so that's the next topic we'll address, and we'll throw the order to Vanessa Vaughn West in District 39. I'm going to ask a follow-up question after I ask you all the same questions, so kind of depending on your answer to the first question, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, so do be prepared for that, but I'm asking you all the first question first. Of course, 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected a proposed amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. It was seen as a major victory for abortion rights supporters. Debate about abortion has continued in the state legislature since. Lawmakers have debated dozens of bills seeking in some way to impact or limit abortion procedures in Kansas. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year. We do have a question from the audience. Asks it this way: do you support a woman's right to control her own fertility and exercise reproductive autonomy? That's one view. We also have other questions that highlight what they see as the sanctity of unborn life. So I think readers and audience members want to know where you stand on this issue. So do you support any new restrictions on abortions or laws in any way governing the procedure beyond what the state already has in place? Why or why not? And we'll start with Vanessa Vaughn West for 60 seconds.
Yep, let me be clear. I do not believe the government has a role in a woman's reproductive decisions, and I would vote to reflect that. I will always stand up against further restrictions on reproductive freedom. Women deserve the right to make our own decisions when it comes to our doctors, our health care, and that needs to be free from political interference. In August of 2022, this district, not just Kansas, this district voted no. We made it clear, the voters made it clear how we felt about this issue, but yet and still, in the past legislative season, we've had close to 20 bills where folks are still trying to chip away at reproductive freedom. We cannot let that stand. So healthcare decisions should be between a person and their doctor. Those choices should be autonomous. Those choices are reflective of where that person is. I'm not trying to get into the heads of why people make different decisions, but I believe that they should have the ability to make them.
And a follow-up question for you, Vanessa. Abortion opponents say there is a compelling state interest in protecting unborn life. Moves to do that by, say, allocating funding for pregnancy resource centers, which the legislature has done. They say that promotes alternatives to abortion that are cast as a way to give women safety and support during pregnancy and childbirth. Your response to that idea that such laws are bills and measures that have been debated in the last 2 years, that they don't infringe on the right to abortion, actually make women safer?
So there are already places where folks can get education about how to navigate the healthcare decisions related to a pregnancy. I don't believe that we need additional support in those areas. People can get that as needed. I will say this though, when it comes to having a child, there are many things that go into that, and there are maybe some mental health supports that we have underfunded. There are some additional things that we can do as a community in order to support folks, not just during the pregnancy period, but once the child is here. What are we going to do to ensure that we have the resources, the community supports in order to provide for folks who may need additional care, who may need additional support? Those things could include childcare vouchers and other things. So.
Going to District 117, Bill Hammond, the initial question to you: do you support any new restrictions or measures on abortion that the likes of which that have been debated in the last 2 years in the Kansas legislature? Why or why not?
I have a walk card. I discovered that when you run for office, the first thing your people tell you gotta have is a walk card. I didn't know what a walk card was. Bill's priorities: women's right to bodily autonomy. Women's health care is family health. Decisions made between a woman and her physician must be honored. Bodily autonomy is precious and is no concern to the government. That's my position, clear and simple.
Your response to the idea that some of the measures that have been debated in recent years don't necessarily infringe on the right to abortion, which was decided by the 2022 vote, but actually make women safer, the process of pregnancy safer?
I think most of the things that have come out have basically tried to make it harder for women to do what the Constitution of Kansas says they're entitled to do. And I think the legislature ought to keep their nose out of it.
Going down to the end of the table, Angela Steens in District 39, the initial question to you: do you support any of the types of measures that have been debated in the last 2 years in the Kansas legislature that put either some new restriction or limit or in any way impact the procedure of abortion in Kansas? Why or why not?
Sorry about that. So, as the candidates up here also have mentioned, we already voted about that on here in Kansas, and everyone wants abortion to be legal here. I personally am pro-life. The 20 bills that they are talking about did not even make it out of committee. So when we keep talking about that, I'm like, hey, everybody, by the way, abortion is already legal here in Kansas. Everybody knows that. The other thing that I might add is that, when I go to doors, and I've gone to both Democrat, Republican, and unaffiliated voters, I have had this conversation come up twice. Most people here really care about the economy, what's going on with inflation, and property taxes. The abortion debate has already been settled here in Kansas. So why we keep bringing this up is beyond me. We have not restricted anything, and to say that is not true.
The follow-up question to you, then, I think for some readers, though, the measures that we're talking about that may have not made it to the end, but were at least brought forward in the sessions in the last 2 years, they do see those as invasive, or at least against the spirit of the 2022 vote. How do you respond to that sentiment?
Well, I'm going to share a personal story with you. I myself found myself in an unplanned pregnancy. I was 17 years old when I found myself pregnant with my daughter. She's the most beautiful, wonderful woman and mother. I also have 3 grandchildren, so I thank my daughter very much for that. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. A crisis pregnancy center helped me. They helped me and supported me. I am so grateful for those people and what they did. And without people like them, I don't know where I would have been. So I'm not saying these decisions are easy for women, so I don't pretend to say that that's the story that everyone has or the ending. But I will tell you this, women should have options. If we truly are pro-choice, why not support women who choose to bring their baby into the world? Also fathers. So to say that and just disregard that is not fair. There are women who would like to carry their babies to term, but they don't always have that support. So I think we should provide that here when we can.
Another question from the audience on a slightly different topic. It is about health care. The order falls to Bill Hammond in District 117. The wording of this question is this: what is your approach to providing health care for all Kansans? How would you go about doing it? What policies would you advocate for? What approach would you have? 60 seconds, Bill Hammond.
While I was in western Kansas, I got involved and I was on the board of a federally qualified health center, so I became very much aware of people who didn't have health care. And I also became aware of the number of people we couldn't help because we had not expanded Medicaid. I was also aware that we had dental deserts in western Kansas. And we had areas where dentists would leave a small town and suddenly we couldn't get a dentist. And so I got involved in Oral Health Kansas. And that involvement led me to find out that all across the state, people without dental care had this horrible thing that happened. You know, the tooth doesn't get better by itself. And so we had people showing up at ERs at 2 o'clock in the morning. The emergency room could give them antibiotics and pain medication and a big bill and didn't take care of the tooth. I think we need to expand Medicaid, and then I think we need to look at ways to better get preventive care to people instead of waiting until it's crisis care.
Question over to District 39, Angela Steens. What is your approach to providing health care for all Kansans? What's your philosophy and specific policies that you would advocate or push for if, in your case, reelected?
Thank you. Yes. So when we talk about expanding a lot of this, there are a lot of able-bodied adults that can get insurance. A lot of people that make around, say, $25,000 a year can get that for free. Now, this does not mean expansion currently for people that are currently receiving it, like seniors and children, the vulnerable. I am very much an advocate for shortened wait lists, increased reimbursement for our doctors. You know, I work in healthcare, so I see what happens. A lot of our seniors, for instance, they get on these Medicaid Advantage plans or different things. They can't afford. Then they get back and they think, oh, well, I thought this was going to cover everything. Oh, we had no idea. No one told us that was going to cover that. And, you know, we can have all these things and say, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and expand Medicaid. But then you also have to have doctors to see those patients. We have doctors leaving. At my particular practice alone, we have one nurse practitioner and a few doctors that have left. Doctors can't afford some of the reimbursements that Medicaid is only paid. So we're going to have to look at a lot of that. There's a lot of discussions that have to be made. And in Oklahoma alone, they did Medicaid expansion. And I was just looking at this. They claimed only 126,000 uninsured Oklahomans would be added, but the actual number is nearly 100%. They said that out of that, they spent $2.1 billion. So their exact cost that they said they were going to spend skyrocketed. So I think we really need to look at those before we just say we're going to expand something when we don't even know all of the details.
And ending this question in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, the questioner again from the audience, what is your approach to providing health care for all Kansans? What philosophy would you have? What approaches and specific policies might you advocate for?
I'm going to recenter us on this issue because I think it's really important that we remember what and who Medicaid is for. It's for working families. It's for service providers, retail workers, child care providers, people with disabilities, 75% of whom don't qualify for CannCare or Medicare, and it would cover 7,400 veterans. We, in Kansas, as one of only 10 states in the union that has not expanded Medicaid, we are losing out on more than $6 billion in tax dollars. We've spent a lot of tonight talking about taxes and tax relief. We have many working folks who are in this room, folks who are having Medicaid monies taken out of your check and going to other states. It does not make sense for us to leave this money on the table, to leave so many Kansans sitting in the lurch without health care. And this is something that we have the opportunity to make a swift decision about and to correct very quickly.
A couple of questions from the audience regarding another topic, guns, and they come from, I think, different perspectives. So this is kind of the feel of the room a little bit. So we have one question that asks, the questioner says, he or she says, guns are the leading cause of death among children in the United States. Would you support gun laws such as background checks on all gun purchases, red flag laws, safe gun storage laws? We have another questioner who says this: do the candidates agree with Kamala Harris's position that the government could have the ability to come into your home and check that you're treating your guns safely? I think with the imposition that maybe that is too invasive. So where do you stand on gun rights, gun control, gun safety, however you want to frame it, and what laws or not would you advocate for? Angela Steens.
So first of all, I just want to say I believe in the Second Amendment. My husband and I are responsible gun owners. I am sure most of our Johnson County citizens are, and people across this state. I agree, you know, we want safe storage. I safely store my guns, okay? I don't have them just out in the open. I have 5 children, so I'm certainly not going to leave anything out. I have 3 grandchildren too. The thing is, though, government overreach, how do you get, I'm just curious, are you going to just break into people's homes and like knock on their door and say, hey, let's see where your guns are stored? I think that sounds pretty unbelievable. And so I don't see how that would even be enforced. We want to keep our schools safe. I have 3 grandchildren. It makes me sad that kids have to practice shooter drills. But you know, one thing, and I heard this mentioned the other night, and I thought it was a great point, is mental health. Mental health in this country is a very serious issue. I am a very big advocate for mental health. I can tell you right now here in Shawnee, we have had co-responders that we put on our teams with our police force. They have helped tremendously to diffuse a lot of these situations because there's a lot of people that have a lot of mental health depression. We have a lot of veterans, I think,
Finish that thought,
that
yeah.
was mentioned earlier. And so we need to really look, and yes, that's just part of the problem, but there are a lot of problems
Yep.
that we need to address when it comes
Staying
to
to
gun
District
safety.
39, Vanessa Vaughn West, the question about guns, again, a couple perspectives from the room at least, some asking about specific gun legislation, others worried about the government being too invasive and trampling on the Second Amendment. Where do you stand?
As a gun sense candidate, I stand for common sense gun laws. This is not about moving away from the Second Amendment. I fully respect the right to bear arms, but with that right comes responsibility. And that responsibility means that as individuals, as community members, we must ensure the safety of those around us. And so that is simply done quite easily with red flag laws, with Safe Secure, and with many things that are just helping us. And so what we could do is that we're not talking about extreme measures here. We're really talking about sensible gun storage, sensible gun actions. And the kicker is sensible gun owners want sensible gun laws. This is not extreme. This is very manageable. And this is something that protects not only our children in schools who are going through these drills, but it also protects us as a community. And so I'm not trying to dip into anybody's home, but I do think that just as we have a responsibility to be safe drivers with a driver's license, we need to have a responsibility to have safe storage and safe control of our guns.
And rounding out this issue about guns, where you stand and what specific measures, if any, you would support, or philosophically where you fall on this issue in District 117. Bill Hammond, your response.
You know, when you have her go first, it's really hard to up that any. I just want to say I applaud everything she says, and one of my first endorsements was Moms Demand Action. They've got some reasonable things, and I will support those.
And that's period. That's the end
That's
of it.
it. What else do I say?
I don't want to court that right now. I don't want to test fate there. Okay. A couple final questions before we get to the 7 o'clock forum. So I believe this falls to Vanessa Vaughn West. That's the order we're in, correct? So District 39. So this was a question that was posed by an audience member in the last forum. It still is apropos to any state house race. And it's on a lot of our readers' minds. We had a lot of questions about it in our email before these forums. So a question like this, do you think Kansas elections are secure? What steps, if any, would you want to take in the future to continue to keep them secure? 60 seconds.
Yes, I do think that Kansas elections are secure. Anytime we start going down a road of questioning the security of our elections, we are beginning the slippery slope of questioning the security of this democracy. We have the ability to cast votes as individuals who've done research, as individuals with our own passions and identities, and we have many levels of federal, state, county, local safety controls to ensure that those votes are taken and nothing happens to them. And so this is one of those situations where we have a solution that is looking for a problem. We don't have a problem with election safety. And so I encourage you all to go out and vote, to do that with confidence, and to really honor the decisions that are made through that electoral process.
Going to District 117, Bill Hammond, do you think Kansas elections are secure? If there's anything else that you would want to see the state do to make sure that those elections remain secure, if you think so, or make them more secure?
You know, this thing has been kicked around, and our Secretary of State, who happens to be in the other party than I am, has basically said we've got secure elections. We've had people, okay, if there's a problem, let's go find it. We can't seem to find the problem. Why are we still kicking around? I'd like to take a different approach on this. You know, I've knocked on a lot of doors, and we have a lot of older voters in my district. I really wish we could do more with vote by mail. You know, when my daughter lived in Oregon, I thought vote by mail sounded a little crazy. I thought, what on earth are these people doing out there? You know. And what we discovered was Oregon really doesn't have a problem with voting, doesn't have a problem with security, but what they do by having vote by mail, people get their ballot and they can find also those bottom issues. For example, you're going to get to vote on a lot of judges this year. How many people have researched the judges? Hey, I'm impressed. Unfortunately, the majority of us haven't yet. But if you got a ballot early, you could find those things, look them up and study more. So I'm in favor of vote by mail for people who need it.
Rounding out this question back in District 39, Angela Steens, do you think our elections in Kansas are secure? Any other steps you would like to take in the future to continue to keep them secure or make them more secure?
Well, I agree with the other candidates here. Voting is secure here in Kansas. Like Bill Hammond mentioned there, the security of our states. Secretary of State Scott Schwab has said that. We require voter ID here, which I think is very important, and I appreciate our Attorney General here in Kansas for making that. Also, there were many election laws that were looked at before I was sworn in this last session, and people want to trust our elections. You know, I want to trust our elections. Who doesn't? Nobody wants to feel like, oh my gosh, my vote's not going to be counted. Voting is a privilege. That is something that we really take seriously here. So I wish everyone would actually look at the candidates before they voted them, because I think that's really important too. I think many of you probably here in the audience are doing those things. So I appreciate you for coming to this forum and exercising your right to look at that and look at the candidates and what they stand for, because we do stand differently on some of these issues. But I can tell you here in Kansas, I do believe that we have integrity in our elections.
And final question, it'll kind of stand in for a closing statement. It does come from the audience. So this will be the last one. I believe the order falls to Bill Hammond to begin this one in District 117. This is one audience member asking, if elected or re-elected, how do you plan to regularly meet with or listen to constituents to hear and honor their concerns? So constituent relations, maybe issues of transparency a little bit. So this will be your last answer, and we'll start with Bill Hammond, 1 minute.
Gerrymandering in both parties do it, and it's wrong. I have a district that starts, I got to get closer to the mic. This mic is bugging me, folks. I have a district that starts in Douglas County, but I don't have Lawrence, and I don't have that other city, Baldwin. Yeah, straight. I've got the southern part of Eudora, the northern part of DeSoto, a couple of rural areas, and then 80 or 63% of my voters are up here in Shawnee. I have thought a lot about this because I know Highway 10 better than I ever thought I would know Highway 10. I have traveled that. It means that what it's going to take for me is, one, I want to do a newsletter on a regular basis. I want to do that both hard copy and I want to do it by email. It means that I'm going to have to be at a variety of forums, functions, both in Douglas County, Johnson County, and many places in between. It's not going to be an easy district to serve, but I'm committed that if I get elected, I'm going to be available to the voters where they need me and where they want me so they can ask questions.
Same question down to District 39, Angela Steens. If elected or re-elected, how do you plan to regularly meet with or listen to constituents to hear and honor their concerns in District 39?
Well, I can tell you that I'm already doing that already. I get emails, I get phone calls, I frequently meet with people. I'll go to their homes, whatever they request. I'm very much about being a people person. That is something that I pride myself on. I think working in healthcare has helped me that because I've served so many different diverse people throughout my career. I will tell you also, people know where I live. They literally know my address. I hate to tell you, they probably even know my garage code. So as far as that goes, I send out daily or not daily, but I try to send out as much communications as I can. I send a letter when I was first elected from the State House. I tried on the council. I'm very good about sending out letters as well. And my constituents know that I'm available. I try to answer people in a timely manner. Sometimes things do get a little lost sometimes, and so, we're all human, right? I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I do care about my constituents. I make it a point to make sure that they know that they're being heard, and that that is one big thing, is that I'm representing them, whether they're with my team or not my team, whoever they are. We work on both sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter. You have to represent all when it comes to this district.
And then staying in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, last question. If elected or re-elected, how do you plan to regularly meet with or listen to constituents to hear and honor their concerns in District 39?
So I'm already exemplifying this. For those of you all who know me and have been around this campaign, you've been able to be linked into the many things that we're doing to connect with people, whether it is after my 9-to-5 job, going out and knocking doors and talking with people, whether it is holding forums, talking to voters, bringing constituents together to discuss issues of importance, whether it is sending out a weekly newsletter to let you know how I feel on certain policy issues. These are things that we are already beginning to do, in addition to the social media communications, in addition to the phone calls, in addition to the text. So I am someone who prides myself on being very accessible, someone who is in this race to be the voice for the people, because I understand that in order to be a good representative, I have to understand what is on your mind. I have to know what is important to you, and we cannot do that without having honest conversations with each other. And so I will commit to doing that moving forward.
Well, I want to thank the candidates for their participation in tonight's forum. Give them a round of applause for showing up and sharing their views in a civil manner. We have another forum to get to, so I'll make this short if you're watching online or in the room. So deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 15th. Early voting starts Saturday, October 19th. Election day is Tuesday, November 5th. Please get out and vote and do the research on the candidates. We always like to encourage our readers to vote. Thank you for watching this forum. You can find all of the Johnson County Post election coverage at johnsoncountypost.com. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good to meet you. Good to meet you. You did good.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You did well.
Thank you.
Next card's pen.
Yeah, I don't know either.
You spoke about school safety, right?
I did.
Earlier?
I did.
Do you think it makes kids more or less safe? I know it's kind of hodgepodge of technology
Are
going
you
on here.
recording right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I like to talk to the people who are going to be making laws.
Don't let him record. He's not here representing the news media.
I'm an individual in Johnson County.
You can't record people.
Says who?
Well, wait, did you ask?
It's a public forum. She was talking to
Did you
me.
ask her, though, if you could record her?
No, I did not. And are you in charge of this room or this forum or
but
anything?
you need to explain to people. They think you're here as part of the news media, and I don't think that's very kind to do that. So.
I don't think it's your business, honestly. I mean, I don't want to be rude to you.
You got to hear everybody's answers as everyone else did. But identify yourself if you walk up to people. Please, thank you. Tell them your...
Have you told me your name? Wow.
So, my kid's baseball game, but I am reachable, so certainly reach out to me and we can talk later.
Okay, thank you. Did Bill already leave too?
How'd I do? Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You spoke very well up there.
I think you do need to go, right? Well, at some point I do need to go, yes. Okay.
You spoke very well up there.
Thank you.
You spoke about school safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it makes kids more safe knowing that there's none of the teachers are armed, they can't defend themselves or kids, even if they want to, even if they're trained?
He needs to go.
Yeah, Bill.
Bill, if it's your choice, you don't want to talk to me, I won't talk to you. People were walking in front of us and it's not very nice of them.
I think I choose not to this evening. I think I'm at the end of a long day.
All right, well, enjoy your evening. I like to talk a lot and then sometimes not. That's my job. I'm just recording public meetings, candidates, and sharing with my neighbors. Okay. Getting yelled at by some of them, I guess. They're jumping in front of me and not very nice. Thank you. Some people like to try to control the conversation, I guess.
Okay, I think we are ready to go. Well, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for 2 Kansas Senate districts in northwestern Johnson County, also into a few other counties as well. We'll get into that. We'll give the candidates a chance to introduce themselves shortly. This is the third of 3 forums we're hosting this evening at Monticello Library in Shawnee. All 3 of the forums we do tonight are being live streamed, and the separate videos of those forums will be put on the Post Facebook page where voters can view them at any point between now and November 5th. We want to thank the Johnson County Library for allowing the use of this space tonight. I will also say this is 7 o'clock. The library closes at 8. So we're going to hear a warning at 7:45 and 7:55, and 8 o'clock we make it to 8 o'clock. So it's a short little announcement, pre-recorded. It will interrupt whoever's talking. It will allow you to stop, and we'll pick back up your time after that. Just warning you now. I also want to thank those of you still in attendance here tonight, turning out on a Thursday night to watch this, and those of you watching online as well. I also want to thank our subscribers. It's your support that allows us to put on events like this and cover local elections every year like no other local outlet does. Well, with that being said, let's dive right in. And so let's start with opening statements. The format has been explained to the candidates. If you've been here earlier, you also know how we do things. So let's give them a chance to introduce themselves first. And so we'll go right down the line. That's how it shook out. And so we'll start in Senate District 9 with incumbent Senator Beverly Gossage. Allow her a chance to introduce herself and get each 1 minute. So, Ms. Gossage, if you want to start.
Thank you. I'll just tell you, for those of you that don't know, Senate District 9 boundaries include a large swath of Olathe, DeSoto, Baldwin City, Eudora, Tonganoxie, Linwood, Bonner Springs, and Edwardsville. That's 8 school districts. So doing a lot of walking. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. My children all attended DeSoto schools, all 4 of them. I was a former classroom teacher. That's all I ever wanted to be, was a teacher since I was 4 years old, and made my little brothers and sisters sit down and color when I told them to do it. I'm the Sylvan Learning Center's district manager formerly, and for the last 20 years I've been a health insurance agent, helping people with their Medicare and individual policies and also employer plans. My family owns Castle Plumbing in Lawrence, Kansas, that my mom and dad started 52 years ago. I chair multiple committees, including the Senate Public Health, Foster Care, Child Welfare, Homelessness, Suicide, Senior Centers, and Mental Health. And I also serve on the Education Committee, Insurance Committee, and Judiciary.
We'll stay in Senate District 9 and now to go to Norman Malico. Give you a chance, Mr. Malico, to introduce yourself and your opening statement.
Yes, my name is Norman Malico, and I am a retired telecom engineer. I work for Sprint.
And maybe scoot a little bit closer to the microphone.
Okay, Sprint.
There we go.
Nokia, Alcatel-Lucent, Carafi National. We used to be a software developer and then became, a manager, therefore, losing almost technical ability. I've retired now. I've been walking a lot. She's right about this district. You are on your feet all the time, canvassing this district. So I've been living here since 1988 in Olathe. I have 3 children, one in Chicago, one in South Carolina, and one is a dentist in Eudora, Kansas. So my wife is a nurse practitioner and also a nurse midwife. And so anyway, we've made our home here, and anyway, we would like to continue to make it better.
Well, thank you. As you both alluded to, Senate District 9 covers portions of 4 counties, not just Johnson County, but Douglas, Leavenworth, and Wyandotte as well, so we appreciate you both being here. Senate District 10, let's go to that race now, and we'll start with Andrew Mall.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Mall. I am a father of two amazing boys, ages 12 and 4. A husband of over 21 years to an incredible woman who I actually met on a blind date 26 years ago tonight, and who happens to also be my business partner. I am a small business owner and have been a small business owner and operator for more than 20 years, a passion that I sort of developed at an early age growing up in and around the district that I am running for. I went to Shawnee Mission West High School, got my first job at the age of 12, working hard for an animal clinic, walking dogs and cleaning cages to help support my mom and myself, and went on to put myself through college at Kansas State University to earn a 4-year business degree, and ultimately moved back here with my future wife to call this place home, a place that I called home for many, many years. Thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Staying in the Senate District 10 race, and we'll go now to the end of the table, and Senator Mike Thompson, we'll give a chance for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the Post for having us in here, and everybody for being here tonight. I am Mike Thompson. I have been a sitting senator in District 10 now for 5 years. I chair the Federal and State Affairs Committee. I sit on 6 committees total. The cleaning crews at the State House will affirm that I'm one of the first senators in the morning, one of the last out at night. I've worked hard for many, many years. I was in the Navy. I was on broadcast for 40 years. My beautiful wife of 48 years is sitting in the back there, and we raised our 3 kids here. We have 9 grandkids and 3 great-grandkids. And I am serving, I could have retired after my long career in broadcasting, but I'm serving because I truly believe that the solution is not with the federal government, but with the state government. I've been an independent voice in the Senate. I've shown that I can bring groups together to work together to get good solutions. But at the same time, I look at the merits of every bill. I vote on them based on the metrics and whether or not the bill will be good for Kansas, and I want to continue to serve you to the best of my ability.
Thank you to the gentleman in the District 10 race. Of course, the Senate District 10, just to, if you don't know, it covers pretty much most of Shawnee, parts of Lenexa, Olathe, Lake Quivira, and Bonner Springs as well. Well, let's go to the first question. The order falls to Norman Malicote in the Senate District 10 race. You'll all get the same question. I've been starting all the State House forums with this question. Kind of gives you a chance to maybe expound a little bit on your opening statements and tell the voters what your priorities are, as well as what you think the priorities are of your district. So what do you see as the biggest priority or need for the residents in District 9? Norman. Well, 90 seconds, by the way, just to make clear, 90 seconds for all of you to answer this.
I think
just scoot a little bit closer to the microphone, just do it.
Well, I'm running based on the vision of that Kansas needs change, and that Kansas is really not about boomer representatives like myself. It's really more about the Gen Z, the Gen X's, the younger, the millennials, and basically they, what they want Kansas to be. One of the things Kansas is actually depopulating. Kansas really, needs to attract, talented young people, to, boost, the economy in Kansas, and I don't think we're doing a very good job of it actually. And so I think, when I spoke to the Olathe Chamber of Commerce just recently, that's what I was really emphasizing, that we need to really, speak to how do we get our own kids back, that don't want to come back from Chicago, don't want to come back from South Carolina, don't want to come back from San Francisco, that we're all educated here, all very smart, all have skills. How do we do that? Well, one of the things I thrown in my face all the time is like, well, we don't like Kansas, by the way of the culture wars, and so I know in the previous, discussions, it was touched upon somewhat, but actually the younger generations really have no use for this at all. So that's one thing I think is that we need to end this, and we need to get about, encouraging, what it takes to get our children back. Yes.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, the question to you, what do you see as the biggest priorities, needs from residents in District 10?
Well, since knocking doors this entire summer, knocking over 4,000 doors now. My campaign team has heard lots from voters in Senate District 10. Senate 10, as I mentioned, I grew up there, and I know my neighbors. They want to help their fellow Kansans. They want their neighbors to live their lives authentically. They want to have common sense solutions to their challenges. And they certainly want their leaders, their elected leaders, to listen to them. And I want to be that voice for Senate District 10. We want strong public schools. I'm a realtor, and I talk with folks every single day about putting down roots in our community. And the number one thing that I hear from everyone is strong public schools. So we need to fully fund them. I think these communities were built on our public schools, and a move towards a voucher system would decimate them. And so I think the number one thing that I hear about are strong public schools. That is what built these communities. I also hear that they don't want the government to interfere with their own private personal decisions. Young folks, as Norm mentioned, are being driven away from our state because of those policies. And people want the government to stay out of their personal businesses and personal private matters. And so I want to be able to strengthen that and make sure that our government stays out of their business and attract those young folks back to our state so that we have a strong workforce and a future for our state.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, the biggest priorities or needs for this district?
Well, I've been walking my district since May, so I'm on my sixth month of walking. I've hit over 16,000 doors. And from everyone I've heard, it's the economy, stupid. You've heard that. Property tax is probably the number one thing people bring up. We are running seniors out of their homes. I ran into a couple the other day who had to downsize to a 1,500 square foot condominium because they were chased out of their previous home. They couldn't pay the tax. They are on a fixed income. They're worried about being kicked out of that home. They weren't sure what they were going to do next. So we have been trying to reduce property tax to SCR 1604, which would cap valuations. The governor vetoed our attempt at increasing the exemptions on the Homestead Act and increasing the income levels so that more people could take advantage of that. So we got to continue to work on that. Also, we need to bring down our tax rates in general. We tried to get a single rate tax at a lower rate. We're not competitive with the surrounding states. We have the highest tax rate. This is why we're losing people. In fact, in Johnson County, we're losing a lot of the high-end earners because they have the wherewithal to move out and get away from this high tax structure and move to another state that's more friendly to them, in places like Tennessee or Texas or Florida. So we need to join the cadre of states that have a lower tax rate. I've been in the Senate long enough. I know how we can do it. And with the next 4 years, I'm going to work very hard to do so.
We'll go back down to the other end. I think you were quoting James Carville. I don't think you were calling anyone here stupid. So
I was not calling anyone here stupid.
There's no need for a rebuttal. Okay, so we'll go down to the other end of the table. Beverly Gossage in District 9. The biggest priority or needs you see in this district?
I too have been walking every day, usually 9 to 5, and meeting with people at the doors. You know what I hear most often at the door? Get back. Get back. Here, give me your lip. Dogs. And they're trying to push their dogs back while they take your literature. But people who are willing to talk to you are wonderful and take time to talk about their biggest concern. And I agree. We hear the economy most often, inflation, how much things are costing, the lack of affordable housing maybe for their children, etc. And of course property taxes. Many of them don't realize how little the state is involved in property tax, 1.5% as a matter of fact. I met with a gentleman who is a contractor, and he showed me a home he had just built for someone's mother-in-law and said, I was able to build this house for under $200,000. 2 bedrooms, nice little home. And he goes, the fees, they'll kill us when in construction. We have so many government fees, a fee to hook onto the water, a fee to do this, a fee for the 10th inspection, etc. We really need to take a hard look at that so that people can afford to live in this community.
So a couple of you mentioned taxes, a couple of you mentioned education, so we'll jump into those two issues first. The orders falls to Andrew Mall in the District 10 race. So let's start with taxes first. Context for this, of course, is that earlier this summer the lawmakers passed and the governor did sign into law that a tax cut package that does slash roughly $2.4 billion in property and income taxes, reduces the state income tax brackets from 3 to 2, also eliminates the state tax on Social Security benefits. That's what is now law. Still, we do hear from readers who say that they want more tax relief, they want something else done. If elected or re-elected, are there any other tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue? What really, in general, is your philosophy on this, and how would you approach it? Andrew Mall, 60 seconds.
So I've heard it at the doors as well, and the folks up here on the panel are correct. The middle class and the working class are feeling the crunch. Cost of everyday essentials is going up. Home costs are out of control. I believe it's more of a supply issue as opposed to a taxation issue, although people are having to pay higher taxes. We have values going up in homes because we have low inventory, and I do believe that our state can do more to help with that, to lower the cost of homes. As far as taxes go, we cannot go back to the Brownback days, and that's what that single rate tax bill would do. And we don't need the experiments of the Brownback days. We cannot go back to those days because that would make it even harder to live in this state. It would make it even more expensive for the middle class and the working class to put more of their hard-earned dollars in their pocket. And so we do need to focus on a different group of folks, not large corporations and the wealthy. We need to focus on the middle class and the working class when it comes to our tax policies.
Staying at the District 10 race, Mike Thompson, other tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year. In general, what's your philosophy or priorities in this approach?
Well, obviously, lowering tax. What we never factor in the fiscal notes in any of the bills with regard to tax, we always look at how much is it going to cost the government to do this tax, okay? We never look at the economic benefits of allowing people to keep more of their own money. They can't calculate that. The more they do that, the more it expands the economy. Policy for decades. That's driving the inflation, or part of what's driving the inflation. We're going to be at $36 trillion in debt very, very soon. If the state does not recognize that and does not help our citizens deal with that by giving them lower tax rates, we're not going to be able to expand our economy here in the state of Kansas. I also think that there's some very simple things we can change to the regulatory structure that gets the tax burden off the small businesses. Something as simple as how we collect the sales tax. These are our tax collectors for the state, and yet we're penalizing them on day one if they miss a payment. We can change some of that.
I will be asking a follow-up question for all of you about kind of regarding spending, budgeting, as it relates to taxes. We'll come back to that, but go back to the District 9 race and ask the same question of Beverly Gossage. Would you want to see more tax cuts, tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? What would be your philosophy and approach if, in your case, re-elected?
I absolutely do. I want to see more people keep more of their hard-earned dollars and less money coming in. State, we need to have less government and more people being able to make their own decisions. And every time we expand government, you have more people who need government. That's not the way we want to go. One of the things that we worked on, of course, anytime there was a tax relief bill that came across, I always voted for it. And even though there were 7 different major tax bills, we finally came on one that we could all agree upon and the governor was willing to sign. There was a 4% cap on valuation for property tax that came out of the Senate, never quite made its way to the House. But we definitely need to take a look at tax policy, and we don't realize how many times people are taxed. They receive sales tax, property tax, personal property tax, tax here, tax there. Somebody asked me, good thing I don't have to pay tax on food. Again, all we controlled was state tax on food. There will still be local tax on food.
Staying in District 9, Norman, let's go with this question to you. Do you see tax cuts, any tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year?
Well, tailing on to what she's saying is that actually just look at your own,
property taxes on your home. Okay, I mean, really the state's portion is actually practically the smallest. I mean, most of it really is your local, taxing entities. And so the again, the state, can, they have flexibility in terms of like, they need money to run a government, obviously. But, they can get it, through sales taxes, they can get it through property taxes, they can get it through income taxes. So, it doesn't always have to be off property taxes. It could be, from some other source.
Jumping off this same topic, or continuing along this same theme, we did get some email questions as well as one from the audience, kind of tying this issue of lowering taxes also to spending in state services. We did have several readers by email cite the Brownback era, when large tax cuts did lead to diminishing state coffers and accompanying cuts in state spending. Those readers, in their minds, don't want to go back to that era. But how do you balance the competing demands of residents who do still want to see tax relief? You've all said that. You've heard that at doors when you're knocking, but also want to see state services either fully funded or at least not be slashed too much. If you do want more tax cuts, what areas, if any, of the budget do you think could be cut? And we'll start with Mike Thompson, 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. There's a number of different things we can do. First of all, we're sitting on a $4 billion surplus in this state. Second of all, I'd like to find out where Brownback's office is in the State House. It keeps being brought up. If anybody knows the history of that bill, it was Christmas treed up and made virtually untenable. So this conjuring up the ghost of Sam Brownback gets a little bit old. What we can do very easily is start scrutinizing a number of different programs that we have in the state that are not efficient. I sit on the Legislative Post-Audit Committee. There was an audit on the top 5 economic development programs in this state. None of them pay for themselves, and we're talking about over $500 million. So if we just start scrutinizing those and say, hey, these aren't working. If you were in the private industry and you had a program that was not working, that was losing the state money or losing your business money, you would scrap it immediately. And yet we do it perpetually at the state level. These are places we can find the additional funding to be able to do everything we need to do at the state level without cutting any funding at all. And there's a number of ways we can save.
District 9, Beverly Gossage, the idea of balancing voters' desire for more tax relief, but also the desire to have state services not be slashed too much. If you do want more tax cuts, what areas of any of the budget do you think could also be cut?
I'm really glad to have that you asked that question. I'm very pleased that starting next year, what we're going to be doing instead of, example now, I serve on the Education Committee. The education budget is very large, largest budget in the state. But all we see are about 6 pages. They'll say, this is the governor's budget. These are a few things that are in there. So all in favor? And you're just like, wait, can we actually see the budget? Are we allowed to actually see the budget? This next year we will be able to do that. Instead of spending 2 minutes with the budget when you're on a committee, spending more time, more breakdown, more details on what the budget actually is. I'm excited to see that.
And just specific areas that you think might be cut, things that you would target, just to go back to that original question?
Again, there are always multiple things that you feel like, I didn't even know that was in the budget, or why is that in the budget? And for me to start to detail each single one. But usually it's smaller things, and I will call it pork. And where you say, why are we funding this particular museum in this particular town? Well, maybe the legislator wanted to get reelected, and so he went back to his town and said, I'm going to get this funding. So a lot of that pork needs to stop.
Staying in District 9, Norman Malico, the idea of if you want more tax cuts or want to debate more tax relief, any areas of the budget you think could also be cut?
Well, I have not really heard from constituents, demands for certain specific, cuts to the budget. Now, I'm quite sure that Beverly's correct. There are specific pork items that that can be cut. But again, for the average citizen, is basically holding back their dogs, and barely talking to you. And so they are not coming up with, oh, you need to cut that. That's not what's happening out there. So I agree, there needs to be a finer, scrutiny, of every single line item. So
Going back to District 10, Andrew Mall, where you land on this taxing, spending, budgeting question.
Sure, it's a it's a delicate balance, but being a small business owner, I have to deal with this every single day, and I have for roughly 23 years. Being able to balance a budget, put food on the table, make sure that I'm cutting wasteful spending or not getting involved in wasteful spending, and so it's something that I've been trained to do for many, many years. While I don't know the details of what specific projects that or budget items that we would need to cut, I do know that there is wasteful spending, and we just need to be able to identify it. I would focus more on expanding our economic development as opposed to restricting it, because I think that widening our tax base would actually bring more to our coffers and put more revenue into our state. And so my focus would be more on the economic development side of things.
A couple of you mentioned education in your first question about priorities, and so we'll jump from taxes to education, though it's kind of maybe some similar veins and themes here. So this question will start with Beverly Gossage in the District 9 race. We'll say Governor Laura Kelly has boasted of 6 consecutive years of K-12 education in Kansas being fully funded, in her words. A funding bill passed this year also boosts funding for special education. The funding situation appears to be remedied enough that the Kansas Supreme Court is no longer overseeing the funding process. Going into 2025, what do you see as the biggest priorities or any remaining challenges for K-12 school funding, and how would you want to address that if elected? 1 minute.
Let me just say that for the parents that have talked to me at the schools, they're very happy with their schools. We have wonderful teachers in all 8 of the school districts that I serve. However, as far as fully funding the schools, they just hand us the budget. We say, okay, the money goes there. But I can tell you as a classroom teacher, it just never really filtered down to us. And you're like, okay, I got this tiny raise for next year, but now I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to buy these things for my classroom. And I think more of that money needs to get down to the teachers. I would love to see that, but that's not up to the state, just so that you know. It's not something that we do. I'm glad we're going to be reviewing that budget, however. I do think that parents need choices. As a mother, my 3 older children were in the gifted program. I was the parent liaison for special education, but my youngest son was severely dyslexic. Couldn't read at all going into 4th grade. So I left my teaching position to homeschool my son. That was my choice, but not every parent can do that. And I think we definitely need to look at some options for parents.
And we'll ask a follow-up question about that later, but we'll go to Norman Malico now, still in District 9. What priorities, remaining challenges do you see for K-12 education, K-12 education funding next year going into 2025?
Well, I am very much a believer in special education, and I have a personal story myself. My oldest son, basically now it was 2nd grade he started to read, but at first, it was like, I don't know, we weren't sure what language this kid understood, and but nonetheless, but again, through additional special attention and education, and parental involvement, I used to sit with that kid, every night, the kid graduated from Kansas State with a degree in mechanical nuclear engineering and has a master's degree in nuclear engineering. He hates to read, but he can do math. So there you go. I think it's one of those things. It's this between parent and school partnership. We can get these kids where they need to be.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, the biggest challenge, priorities remaining for K-12 school funding, and how would you address that if elected?
Well, as a proud graduate of public schools and a parent, very proud parent of public school students, I think it's very important that we fully fund our schools, including special education. And I know that I'm hearing at the doors that voters understand that there's a shell game going on at the state. And when you say you're fully funding schools but not fully funding special education, I've heard from districts across my district and across the county that say that leaves budget gaps, holes in their budget that then they have to fill by utilizing the general funds that take away from all the students across the district. And so when we're not fully funding both, we're not taking care of our students. Our students deserve better, and we need to take care of them.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, any remaining priorities, challenges for K-12 school funding that you would want to address next year?
Well, we did vote to fully fund special education. And if there's a shell game at all going on, it's at the local level, where they are supposed to use some of the local option budget for special ed, and they have not been doing so. And so we added some funding to that this year to fix that problem, but it's a temporary fix. What we really need to do is scrap the at-risk funding paradigm that we have at the school right now, because what it does is it silos money into certain areas where the school districts are unable to move that money around to where it's needed. And therefore, it does not make it to the classroom. For example, Shawnee Mission District had a 6% increase in students, but had a 23% increase in spending at the administration level. They spent $500,000 on 6 administrative interns. That's doing nothing to help these students. And so if we don't change the funding paradigm to where the state can hold these districts accountable, which is not the case now, then we can't fix this problem. And we've got to make sure that happens.
A question from the audience asks straight away, are you a supporter of public schools? And I'll also just add another question that we've asked in previous forms. Would you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals enrolled in private or religious schools? Because I believe that's the subtext of this written question. So why or why not your support for public schools, and also allowing taxpayer funds to go to individuals or families who may want to send their kids to private or parochial schools? We'll start with Norman Malakote in District 10.
Well, first, the answer is no, and the reasoning is this. Kansas, is basically not a densely populated state. How would that ever work, in central and western Kansas? Like, oh, I'm going to send my kid to this private school that's 5 counties over. I mean, it's just not feasible. Also, in a county like Johnson County or Sedgwick County, it will basically, weaken the public school systems there. So, no, I'm completely against it.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals or families enrolled in private or religious schools? Again, maybe the subtext of the question written down, do you support public schools? Andrew Mall, 60 seconds.
Short answer is no, and it's because our communities are built on these schools, and it would decimate the sense of community when you rip the public schools apart. And our students deserve better, and public funds should go to all students in Kansas, not a select few or the chosen ones. It should go to all Kansas students.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, this question to you. Do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals who want to go to private or parochial schools?
I believe that there's a lot of frustration with the outcomes at the achievement levels of the public schools, and we need to bring those up. We do have a constitutional duty to fully fund those public schools. We met that constitutional duty as the Supreme Court dropped the Gannon decision. I have some very serious concerns about using those funds, because if you tie government money in any way that it goes to a private school, those private schools who are being used as safe havens for some parents who want to keep their kids out of some of the woke agendas at these public schools. May I have a little more time?
Well, you can continue, okay. Of course. Yes.
It gives them a safe haven. And if you attach public funds, eventually the requirements will follow into these private schools. And so you're going to change the public schools, the nature of the public school, or the private schools rather, including home schools. They have some very serious concerns. So this is a very big issue. I think there's got to be a lot of discussion about it, and I have my concerns.
Going to District 9, Beverly Gossage, is a question to you about taxpayer funds going to families, individuals who want to go to private or parochial schools. Your support or not for that?
There are 2 bills that we passed this past year. One was that came out of the Education Committee. One was for open enrollment, to allow students who, somebody mentioned in an earlier panel that their child was bullied, and so they were allowed to go to another school, allowing parents to change a school if for whatever reason they feel that their child is not thriving in the school that they are in. So we did pass that. We also passed a bill that allowed a tax credit if somebody wanted, and again, it's capped at 10 million, but if somebody wanted to put into a fund and for children who maybe are going to go to another school or something of that nature, it could be a parochial school, but it is not taking money away from our schools, our public schools, but it does allow parents to pay into this and get a tax deduction, and then they can apply for this use of this fund. I personally, as a public school teacher, strongly support public schools. But again, I think we really need to look at options for parents. I also think we need to include more parents being allowed to come into the school and participate in the school and help with the reading group and see less of that.
Let's go to the next issue. We'll go to District 10, and I believe the order falls to Andrew Mall. We've gotten a lot of questions via email before this about abortion. We've gotten a couple of questions here in my hand, so let's address this now, and we'll ask each of you a follow-up question kind of based on the response to your first answer. We'll just say the context for this. So 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected the Value Them Both amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. The Kansas legislature has continued to debate measures related to abortion in the 2 years since. Dozens of bills, in fact, seeking in some way to impact abortion procedures, limit them in some ways in some cases. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year. Andrew Mall, do you support any new restrictions on abortion or laws in any way governing the procedure, or do you think the laws currently on the books are effective and necessary? Why or why not?
Well, I stand with the voters of 2022, well over 60% of my district that voted no on the ban on abortion. And I would not support any more restrictions that seem to come up every single year by the dozens. And whether it be stripping away IVF from families trying to start their families in the state of Kansas, or forcing abortion patients to be grilled over why they're getting abortion, it is a constant barrage attacking women's reproductive rights. I believe, and I think the voters in my district believe, the government should stay out of personal, private matters, period.
A follow-up question to you then, do you think that some of the measures that you mentioned, some of them have become law? I think the supporters of those laws think they don't necessarily infringe on the right to abortion, actually make the process and the women involved safer. What would you respond to that?
Well, it's a very personal thing to have to go through, and I don't know that it makes a woman any safer to have to be grilled about why she's getting an abortion. I don't quite understand how that makes anybody safer. I think taking away IVF or not protecting IVF as a treatment to be able to start a family in this state is a travesty. I have friends that live in the district that have utilized IVF to be able to start their families. And so, I think these restrictive measures that we see every single year by the dozens, as I mentioned, are not wanted in my district.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, do you support any new restrictions, any measures related to abortion governing the procedure? Why or why not?
Well, I think as someone who believes in the sanctity of life, someone who believes that life is worth protecting, I was disappointed in obviously the Value Them Both, but I want to remind everyone that as a senator, I voted with the majority of the legislature to put that to the vote of the people. And so we respect where we're at with that point, with the legal and political issue right now. Just a few weeks ago, the Hodes decision was reaffirmed. So that also basically puts us into a position where what we're doing now is trying to support these young women who are faced with this decision by supporting their ability to have adoptions. We passed an adoption tax credit this last year to lower the threshold for young parents who can't have kids. We also increased the refundable tax credit for the pregnancy resource clinics, which provide health care and counseling to these young women. So we want to support them and give them the confidence to choose life. And it's one of these situations where it's not.
A follow-up question to that then. So we had a couple of people mention in their index cards, and I think Andrew Mall might have also alluded to it. especially the law about the surveys asking women questions when they do go into to maybe seek the procedure. Many readers and a couple of people here who send index cards, they do see that as invasive and also just against the spirit of the 2022 vote. So how would you respond to that?
That was voluntary. That we came through Health Committee on that particular bill. We were not mandating that anybody ask or answer those surveys at all. But what we were trying to do is find out the reasons why somebody wanted an abortion and would want an abortion, to give us the data that we need to see how we can support those young mothers. And again, we weren't forcing anyone to answer those questions. That was part of the bill.
District 9, Beverly Gossage, do you support any new measures related to abortion, any new restrictions or limits possibly? Why or why not?
First of all, I carry any of those bills that would come through the committee because I chair the Public Health Committee that would come through my committee on the Senate side. I can assure you there was no IVF bill ever that came through committee. I never even saw one. As far as the question, yes, it was voluntary, just to find out more about, do we know why women are making this very difficult choice? It's collective. There's no name that's put on it. And the providers of abortion provide questionnaires to the state all the time about various things, and it was just adding that to that questionnaire. One of the things I would say is the bills that have come through that have passed have been these: educating women on a woman's right to know what exactly is going to happen to me, what can I expect. A lot of abortions now are done through the pill, and they have to take 2 separate pills about 4 to 5 days apart. And just asking the doctor or the abortion provider to share information that says this could be reversible between the 2 pills. So if you would like to, here's the phone number that you may like to call. And then finally, making sure that those facilities are sterile facilities. These have been the bills. It's not chipping away at all.
I just, so follow up to that, I think the specific measures that you mentioned, I think have been challenged in court. I know people have, the pill reversal one especially has been cast as misinformation by opponents. But how do you respond to just the idea that even debating these measures, bringing them up after the 2022 vote, just not in the spirit of what voters have already decided?
Let me tell you what I've heard from women, and that was people that I know that are pro-life who said, I didn't understand that amendment. I was told, and we had millions of dollars spent on ads that said it would end all abortions. And of course that's not the case. All it said was that the Supreme Court said they found a right to abortion. Where is this right to abortion? And that's what the amendment was talking about. I know no senators that would say that they would want to eliminate all abortion, especially when it comes to exceptions. Pro-life or not.
We'll stay in District 9, and I will say it's almost 7:45, so we might get this announcement right in the middle of this conversation, which is great timing. Norman Malakote, the question to you, the state of abortion access in Kansas, any new restrictions or limits? There we are.
The library will be closing in 15 minutes. Please take materials to a self-check for checkout. Computer and copier access will be terminated in 15 minutes. If you need to have a library card made, please go to a questions desk. Thank you for visiting the Johnson County Library.
Believe it or not, I've been at a library where it also comes in Spanish too, so it doesn't happen here either. So, but okay, Norman Malakote, the question to you to round out this topic: the state of abortion access in Kansas to you. Any new restrictions or laws governing the procedure that you would or would not support? Why or why not?
In the end of the day, this is about women's autonomy over their own bodies.
Just a little closer to the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Okay. At the end of the day, this is about women's autonomy over their own bodies. And again, because it's an autonomous decision, women, you'll view, any additional, legislation or any, additional reporting as invasive. So I would support women and say, no, no more of this.
And again, just the response to you, if that is your position, some of these measures that we've been talking about, that they don't infringe on the right of abortion, they're just meant to govern the procedure more soundly and safely.
Well, is it true? I mean, really, just because somebody says it, is it true?
Okay. We'll go to the next issue, and I believe it's Mike Thompson. We'll start with you. That's the order. We'll go into District 10, and we will start with another question. We got a lot of reader responses about both in the room in previous forums as well as on emails before we went to this, and it's about guns. Many readers concerned about gun violence, rising rates of gun suicides, gun homicides in Kansas. Data shows that those are on the rise. One reader emailed us this question: it's evident we need to do something in Kansas to curb these growing numbers. So is there any piece of gun-related legislation you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries in Kansas? Why or why not? We'll start with Mike Thompson in District 10.
Well, we attempted to standardize the firearms safety program throughout the schools in Kansas this last year so that kids would have a healthy respect for the guns and know how to use them. We also lowered, or actually eliminated the cost to receive a conceal and carry permit in the state of Kansas by eliminating all the state fees. And if anyone's in here has taken one of those courses, it's a very good course. It talks about your legal issues, legal rights, how to properly handle a gun, what your responsibilities are. So I think education is the key. With regard to the gun violence, it really is a mental health problem, I think, to a large degree. 94% of the gun violence and the murders happen in gun-free zones. In fact, there was some new data I heard just recently that there's over 10,000 schools in the United States, and probably they're private schools, that allow the faculty and staff to conceal and carry. There's not been one incidence of gun violence because these shooters may be crazy, but they're not stupid. They look for the place where there aren't any guns so they can increase their carnage without any resistance. So if you don't know someone's concealing and carrying, you're likely not to go in there and shoot the place up.
District 9, Beverly Gossage, any gun-related legislation that you would support that you think would reduce this reader's concerns about gun deaths and injuries in Kansas? Why or why not?
I agree with what Senator Thompson said. Yes, I voted for those bills that would provide more safety, more education for children as well as for young adults.
Staying in District 9, Norman Mallicoat, your position on this, gun-related legislation that you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries, why or why not?
Oh, well, I'm for education as well. I mean, I spent 5 years in the Army. I was an Army infantryman, and knowing your weapon, knowing the safety of the weapon, is absolutely essential. Now, in terms of make country, we don't control borders here. So I'm not sure, other than educating, our children, adults, I'm not sure we can do much about it, really.
Going to Andrew Mall in District 10, any gun-related legislation you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries in Kansas per this reader's question?
So I am a parent of 2 young boys, and I think about this every single day. Unfortunately, as a parent, that's what we have to think about. And it's not a fun thought, but there are definitely things we can do. And I am a proud candidate, a Moms Demand Action candidate, and I believe that there are gun sense solutions out there. It's about access, and there's way too much access to firearms. And if it is a mental health issue, then we should be fully funding and making sure that we have a budget for mental health out there that seems to also be under attack every year when it comes to budget cuts. I think there is legislation we can put out there. We want all of our kids to be safe. We want our community to be safe, and access to guns is the issue. We can do safe storage laws. We can have strengthen our red flag laws. We can get assault weapons off our streets, and we can do background checks on every gun sale in the state of Kansas.
Let's go to a different topic. We're now at a little past 7:50. We're going to have another announcement at 7:55, just fair warning, but maybe time for a couple of more questions. Let's move to another topic, and this will go to Beverly Gossage first in Senate District 9. Elections in recent years in Kansas, as well as in Johnson County, have gone off without a hitch, according to both state and local election officials. Many of our readers, though, still express, I guess you might say, bewilderment or maybe even a little bit of anger at continued suggestions that problems with local elections are possibly leading to widespread voter fraud or miscounts, considering what officials have said. Many readers still seem to take candidates' views on what you might call election integrity as a litmus test of sorts. So the question is, do you trust Kansas election systems? If elected, would you seek to put any new rules or limits around voting in Kansas, or do you think Kansas voting should be made even easier? So let's ask the question to you, Beverly Gossage, first.
I'm happy to answer that question. What I urge everybody to do is work the polls and be a poll judge. I've done that. You can see exactly what's happening. You have people from both parties that are there. Thankfully, in Kansas, we have the safest elections. We have integrity in our elections. I feel very comfortable when I go to the polls to vote. And I think it's unfortunate if people feel like, well, why should I vote? My vote is not going to matter. Or how do I know that it's really going to count? It is going to count. And I appreciate Scott Schwab and what he's done as Secretary of State. And I can't speak to what's happening in other states, but I can certainly tell you in Kansas, I feel very comfortable with our elections.
And a follow-up question I'll ask all of you, just specific policies like drop boxes, mail-in voting, the period after Election Day when mail-in ballots can be mailed in. Do you support or are skeptical of any of those policies?
No, I'm not skeptical of them, but we have to look at them very carefully. Oftentimes, as Senator Thompson said, a bill can be Christmas tree. Like, we all agree on this one thing, but then all of these amendments get added on, and then you end up voting against that bill. But I do think that we have to do something about the fact that, we have people who are voting early, we have people who are voting by mail. Nobody wants to disenfranchise a voter, but we do want to make sure that they are a legal voter. And I think we do that.
Staying in District 9, Norman Malakote, do you trust Kansas election systems? If elected, would you seek to put any new rules or limits around voting, or do you want to make access easier?
Well, first thing, I do trust the system. The only thing I believe that we should investigate is that basically beginning mail-in voting earlier. It used to be earlier, and so I think that's something that needs to be examined again.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, the question to you, do you trust, well, let me ask the follow-up question you. So I was going to ask all of you. Any specific policy? I mean, you mentioned expanding or extending the time for mail-in voting. What about photo ID, mail drop boxes, the time after when mail-in ballots can be sent in? Any other policies that you've considered or think about?
Well, okay, mail drop boxes it depends on what we're really talking about here. So that's really kind of an open-ended question. In other states, I think they do not have as many restrictions on mail-in drop boxes. But I'm talking about, for instance, like the Johnson County Elections Office. Like if you mail it there, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just some box that's in a grocery store.
Oh, but are the secure drop boxes that are around?
Yes, yes.
Okay, District 10, there it is. All right, okay.
The library will be closing in 5 minutes. Please take materials to a self-check for checkout. Computer and copier access will be terminated in 5 minutes. Thank you for visiting the Johnson County Library.
I always say I prefer when it interrupts me as opposed to a candidate. In District 10, Andrew Mall, do you trust Kansas election systems? If elected, would you seek to put any new limits or rules around voting, or do you think access should be made easier in some way?
I trust Kansas elections, and I think the Secretary of State has said such. I certainly wouldn't run around the state pushing conspiracy theories on election fraud or spend taxpayer dollars or a legislature's time on debunking or trying to defraud our elections to the detriment of my own party. I think we should expand voting. I think every legal citizen of legal age should be able to vote, and I think we should make it easier. As a matter of fact, I have 2 children. I have multiple small businesses. My wife and I both work. We sometimes travel for work, so we need that flexibility. We need to be able to vote early or go in on a Saturday. We can't always vote on Election Day, and to restrict it to that day is just not with the times.
And rounding out this question in District 10, Mike Thompson, do you trust the Kansas election systems? Would you seek to put any new limits or rules around voting, or do you want to expand access?
As chairman of the Federal and State Affairs Committee and Senate, I deal with the election laws a lot. We have some of the best election laws in the country. I did work with the Secretary of State on a big cleanup bill, House Bill 2086, in which we looked at some of the outdated laws and tried to clean up some of the statutes on that, and that was a huge amount of work. We spent weeks on that. And I also sit on the Legislative Post-Audit Committee, and we audited the election process in Kansas, and we have found some inconsistencies in training across the state between some of the bigger counties where they actually have election officials and some of the smaller counties where it's run by the county clerk. So it's a very complex issue. We've had some inconsistencies in handling of the voting machines and things of that nature. And when you have some of this information available to you as an audit, then you do need to scrutinize. And I think there's common sense ways we continue to work on the voting process in Kansas to ensure everybody has confidence. But we do have good laws. We do have good elections here in Kansas. And we're just talking about tweaking around the edges to make it better.
And I'll hop back to Andrew to ask a follow-up question of him. But Mike, do you trust the mail-in ballot system that includes advanced voting by mail and secure drop boxes? Do you see any need for reforms there?
Are you asking?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought so. The only thing I would do would probably make sure all the drop boxes are monitored and secure, and or maybe reduce the numbers, because you can use the advanced voting locations as a drop box. Once you go to those advanced voting locations, you can just drop off your ballot right there. And so something as simple as that, I think, is a good idea.
And Andrew Law, you said you kind of in favor of expanding access as much as possible. Are there limits to that? Are there legitimate concerns about easing safeguards? Maybe like requiring photo ID? How does it square that for me?
Well, we certainly have to have the safeguards that we currently have in place. Our elections are fair and they're accurate, and so I don't know that we need to change the current laws that we have, but we certainly need to make it easier for folks to vote.
And let's do one final question. It's almost 8 o'clock. That alarm is going to go off again in just a couple of minutes, but we can stay after. We're not going to get kicked out. But I don't want to stay too long after because we've been going for close to an hour now. So we do have one question from the audience. It did come in this forum, but I think someone in the previous forum asked something similar. It did kind of serve as a good coda to the end of the forum and allow you a chance to go off on a high note. This person asks, how will you keep in contact with your constituents and meet with them when they go to the State House specifically? And so this one goes to Norman Malakote first in District 9. Constituent relations, contacting constituents, being in contact with the people you represent. How will you do it?
Well, basically through a email newsletter. Now, I'm not sure yet about the interval, whether enough would be useful to a voter, say every 2 weeks, maybe a month, something like that. I'm not sure, but that's how I would do it, and I would certainly meet with any voter.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, how would you relate with constituents? How would you be in communication with them?
Well, in my career as a realtor, I have to follow up and I have to communicate with my clients and my customers. And so I've been doing that for 24 years. And the one thing that I would definitely...
Pause that for just
The library is now closed. Thank you for visiting the Johnson County Library.
That's it on that one. You can pick
All
it
right.
right now.
The one thing that I would definitely do would have a town hall meeting every single month. I think it's important for us, for elected officials, to be out talking to their constituency. And then when they come to the State House, that's actually one of my favorite days, is to head to the Topeka and go to the Capitol and talk with my elected officials. But unfortunately, they're not always there. And I think you need to be there. I think you need to take those appointments as an elected official, and I think you need to talk to your constituents.
And saying to District 10, Mike Thompson, constituent relations, communicating with constituents.
I've already been doing that. In fact, I was thrown right into the fire in 2020 when we had COVID. And I spent probably 80% of my time on trying to help people get their unemployment insurance claims because the Department of Labor was having serious problems. I have a newsletter that goes out during session. It's particularly read statewide, as a matter of fact, and I'm kind of known as the go-to senator for a lot of problems. I get people from out of my district emailing me with issues because their own senator's not answering their email. So I do keep in contact. I have an open door policy at the State House. All you have to do is make an appointment. I'll certainly see you. And I answer my phone, I answer my emails, I try to stay up with everything, and I realize that's part of my job, and I try to do as well as possible.
And rounding it out back in District 9, Beverly Gossage, constituent communication, staying in contact with the people you represent. How do you do it?
I do send out a newsletter. We don't always have everybody's emails, so when you're trying to send out an email newsletter, so once during session, we also send out a letter that goes to everyone. That's actually twice during session, and then it asks questions like, what are your thoughts on this? And people send that back, and you get feedback that way. I can just tell you, we in the Senate, we have 4 different committees that are standing committees. So my morning starts on some days at 8 o'clock in the morning, but 8:30 to 9:30, 8:30 to 9:30 is the first committee, and then that goes 9:30 to 10:30 for the next committee, and then 10:30 to close to 12 for the next committee. And then that's the first time I go to my office, and my office assistant said, I signed up 5 people to talk to you today, so you grab a power bar and say send the first one in, and you try to talk to as many people as you can, because by 1:30 you need to be in your next committee. For me, that's education. By 2:30 you have to be on the Senate floor by the time they call your name for roll call. And that could last till 5 or 5:30. It's very, very difficult to come and see your senators, so I do encourage you to make an appointment.
Well, thank you to the candidates. Also, thank you to the audience members for staying after closing time. Give them a round of applause for their participation in tonight's forum. And I don't want to stay too long. It's been a long night, so just reminders. The deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 15th. Early voting begins on Saturday, October 19th. And then, of course, Election Day itself is Tuesday, November 5th as well. Thank you so much to the candidates. Thank you so much to the subscribers and people watching online. And you can find all of our election coverage at johnsoncountypost.com. Thank you.
Do you know if Andrew Mall's still around?
Oh, I think he left.
He already left?
Yeah.
Huh. Mike.
Hey.
Billy Crone, we've emailed a couple times.
Hey, Billy, how you doing?
I used to be in your district.
Oh, did you really?
I might still be for another week or something.
Oh, gosh.
I'm part of Miriam that went to Dinah.
Oh, Dinah, sorry.
So I don't know actually who our senator is for sure 100% right now.
Well, if you're in the northern part of Merriam will be Pat Petty, and the southern part of Merriam will be Dinah Sykes.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's like will or is currently. Because like
is currently is it's same kind of similar line. So if you're in Thompson's district currently, you would be in basically Sykes is taking over what Thompson has. Petty is remaining very similar. That's how I can describe it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the years you represented us.
Thank you. Well, I'll continue to represent you.
Yeah, well,
just may not be in the district.
I've talked to senators and representatives from districts that are not mine, and a couple of them were defensive, like, well, you're not my constituent. But
I listen to everybody.
The laws that the legislature passes affect all Kansas, you know? So for us to talk to each other, I think is helpful. So.
Oh, good for you.
Well, thanks,
Glad you're
I appreciate
doing
it.
Sometimes I know I email up a storm, but.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I read them all. I really do.
I appreciate that.